This is Audible.
Audible Studios presents Her Dad's Friend, written by Penny Wilder, performed by Lillian Clare and Blake Richard. Chapter 1. Know what happens when you bring a bottle of cinnamon whiskey to a party? Nothing good, that's what. It should come with an additional warning label. May cause extreme stupidity and drunk sexting. I blame it on Emily. Who needs enemies when you have friends like her? She bought the booze, and it was her idea to come to this frat party in the first place and practice at being 21 before my birthday tomorrow. I admit, it started off as a good time. Several of my friends are here, the music's perfect, and there's a hot tub, so bonus. I'm a crack shot at beer pong and hit the best of all the flat notes during karaoke. But as we all know, good times and good decision-making aren't one and the same. I may or may not have butt-chugged Grey Goose with future lawyers and housewives. And I probably danced topless on the sofa since that's what all the pictures on Instagram are showing. Only I don't pay too much attention to those since that shit can be photoshopped. During all of this, I lost my shoes and who knows what happened to my bra. At least Emily is here to keep me in check. She has always been the responsible one, about as responsible as a toddler dog-sitting, but still, she's a better grown-up than me. She suggests a group of us get together to play Would You Rather in one of the quieter rooms. It's a game, no big deal. A game can't get me in too much trouble, right? Yeah, right. Her question for me is, who would you rather fuck, your ex or his dad? Of course I choose his dad, because he was hot and my ex was kind of a douche. Thing is, I've always had doe eyes for older men. It all started with my dad's best friend, Paul. He looks good for his age, a silver fox covered in tattoos, and is in better shape than most guys who go to my school. And OMG, those tropical blue eyes and 5 o'clock shadow on a strong jaw? Yes, please. We've been flirting since I turned 18. He'd tell me how beautiful I was, compliment my ass in a pair of jeans, or notice how nicely I've developed. It was all innocent, never going too far, no touching or talking about sex or anything like that. But I want him. Bad. Just thinking about him has me pooling between the legs. I lean against the pool table, looking around at all these young bucks strutting around the house in their polos and cargo shorts. I wonder which one I can use for the night. Maybe do some role-playing, pretend he's Paul, have myself a daddy fantasy. A cute jock type walks by with all his muscles and cocksure youth. His boner is about as subtle as a rocket launcher smuggled under spandex pants. The way he stares at me leaves no questions about his interest. Though I'm definitely in the mood, his baby face just won't do because I know how this story ends. I've read it many times. Well, not that many. Enough to count on one hand, and maybe some toes. I see it so clearly. We'll end up in his sock-stinky room full of pizza crusts and porn magazines littering the floor. The glow from his snake terrarium and the video game he has on pause will double as mood lighting. He'll fumble around my body aimlessly and expect me to ooh and awe and appreciate all the pleasure he's not giving me for 5 minutes until he gets his rocks off. Then he'll promise to call the next day. I'm bored just thinking about it, so I don't even bother. When he heads toward me, I cover my face with my phone and pretend he doesn't exist. He's sober enough to get the hint. I continue to play with my phone even after he's gone. My ass is wet and sticky from spilled drinks on the floor. I move to the stained, threadbare couch next to Emily and find Paul's name in my contacts. When I'm bored, I like to look through our old texts. Birthday wishes from last year. A Merry Christmas here, Happy Thanksgiving there. There are pictures of us during a houseboat trip and at an air show. Unfortunately, my parents are all in the pictures too. The whiskey has gone to my head and there's no room left in there for rational thinking. Not a single consequence occurs to me as I type out 5 little words. I want to fuck you. I show Emily. What if I actually sent this? I can hear myself talking slow and slurring my words. I've drank my body weight in everything over 50 proof, and it's starting to show. She squints at the little screen. My phone is prehistoric and it has a post-it-sized screen. When she's done reading, her eyes go wide and she says, with a sly smile, "What if you did?" Her words are clearer than mine. She never drinks as much as I do. That's what maturity looks like, and someday I want to be just like her, but right now, I'm having fun. Or at least I was until she reaches over and hits the send button on my phone. "Emily!" I yell, jabbing at the screen, trying to get the words back somehow. "What the fuck?" I can be heard over the music, and everyone turns to gawk in the hopes of a catfight. I stare at my phone, mouth breathing, hoping she hit the wrong button, but no. The text is there, right under his last text to me several months ago, congratulating me on getting my own apartment. Emily rolls her eyes and tosses her blonde ponytail over her shoulder. "You've been talking about hooking up with Paul for years now. I just did you a favor. You're welcome." Turning away, she goes back to her game like it was nothing, like she hadn't just ruined my life with a touch of a finger. My buzz is DOA, instant sobriety. I want to go home, but I came with Emily and don't have enough cash on me to call a cab. Right now, I just need a place to disappear. I stumble to the closest closet, kicking at beer cans and stubbing my toe on a keg. Where the hell are my shoes? In the closet, I sit among the coats and sports equipment, wondering how the hell I can undo this. For an hour, I literally do just that. Google, how to unsend a text. Apparently, that's not a thing. I guess us fucking idiots are on our own. When I finally make it back to my apartment at 3 a.m, I stay up as long as I can, trying to finish reading the paperback I started 3 months ago while I wait for him to text back. I think about sending another, saying, "Just kidding," or telling him I'd sent that to the wrong person, but part of me is glad it's out there. I want him to know. My eyelids grow heavy, and before I know it, I'm drooling on my pillow and dreaming I'm being chased by fried eggs with a spatula. I have weird-ass dreams after I've been drinking. When I wake up in the morning, I no longer want Paul to know how I feel about him. I regret everything. It's early. I always wake up early when I'd rather sleep in. My phone vibrates, rattling from one end of my bedside table to the other. Shit, I can't look. Instead of dealing with it, I roll over and try to go back to sleep. Fat chance with the groundkeepers mowing the lawn outside my bedroom window and the neighbor's parrot on its perch outside, singing its unholy morning song like some goddamn city rooster. It doesn't help either that the sun shining through my window feels like a Death Star laser beam searing into my face. I'm in a bad fucking mood. I also have a godfather of a hangover and my stomach is in knots. Closing my eyes, my mind goes straight to the ominous what-if pile and jumps in it like a Labrador in a heap of autumn leaves. What if the text blinking on my bedside table is from Paul, telling me he doesn't want anything to do with me? What if he told my dad? I would die. If the embarrassment didn't kill me, my dad definitely would. The good thing is Paul doesn't live in town. He moved away to the other side of the state 2 years ago, and I haven't seen him since, so avoiding him is easy. I slam my arm down on the bed, mad at myself for being so stupid. Next time I get drunk, my phone is going in a lockbox with a key, retina scanner, and most importantly, a breathalyzer. I won't have access to it until I blow under the legal driving limit. Unfortunately, I can't lay in bed and avoid my phone forever, so I say a Hail Mary and pick it up. My entire body sighs when I see it's from Emily. The text says, "Get up, bitch. Time for some birthday pampering." Still no text back from Paul. After dragging my body into the shower and brushing the dead animal off my teeth, Emily takes me out for a manicure. I try to stay mad at her for hitting send on that text in the first place, but it's impossible while having my hands massaged. Sitting in the chair, getting my nails painted a bright shade of teal, I ask her, "Do you think it's strange my parents haven't called to wish me happy birthday yet?" They always call first thing in the morning to wake me up on my birthday, Mom singing terribly out of key while my dad mumbles his happy birthday in the background. I was going to mention Paul not sending a birthday text either, but was afraid it sounded too pathetic. "Em," I say when she doesn't respond. The entire time I've been with her this morning, she's been on her phone. She has makeup on and her hair curled. I don't know how she manages to pull her shit together after a night of drinking when I feel like a child's beaten doll dragged through the mud. "Oh, sorry." She takes one last look at the screen before she puts the phone in her pocket. "It's not even noon yet. I'm sure they're still in bed. Maybe your dad took your mom over to Pound Town, if you know what I mean," she says, thrusting her hips while sitting in the chair. Our manicurists look at her, then at each other, and say something in a language I'm not familiar with. I lean my head back in the chair and look up at the ceiling, trying to calm my roiling stomach. Thanks for that visual. I just puked in my mouth. After manicures, we grab hangover smoothies and Emily is back on her phone. I'm like the Hulk when I feel like shit, and right now, I'm fighting the urge to rip that phone out of her hand. I'm getting so sick of the clicking sound as she speed types. Seriously, hasn't she heard of swipe? I don't know why she even bothers taking me out if she's just going to ignore me. She says she wants to go out to lunch too, but at this point, I'm fed up and don't even want to go. Plus, my stomach is still a witch's cauldron about to spew forth some black hell if I'm not careful. How is it that every time I drink heavily and feel like shit the next day, I'm always ready to do it all over again by the time the next weekend rolls around? It's starting to feel like I signed up for college just to not learn lessons. "Look, Em, I'm tired," I say, trying to tamp down the inner dragon lady I feel starting to rage up inside of me. "Maybe we can go to lunch some other time." "Are you sure?" She sounds somewhat relieved, which only pisses me off more. "Yeah, I'm sure." "Can I drop you off at your parents' house? Your apartment is out of the way, and there's kind of this guy." "Fine, I don't care." There's always this guy with Emily. We head toward my parents' house. It's more of a mansion than a house, really. 8 bedrooms, 5 baths, a pool house. When I tell my friends where I grew up, they automatically think I'm some trust fund baby, a latchkey kid with a bottomless platinum card. But that's not how it is. Yes, my parents are wealthy, but I don't get anything from them. Hell, I don't even own a car because I can't afford the insurance and gas bill. My dad had to work for everything he has, and he expects me to do the same. He thinks I'll appreciate things more, and so far he's been right. Everything I own, I've had to bust my ass to get. I've scrimped and saved and worked my fingers to the bone. Even if I wanted something from him, he'd never give it freely. We go through the open gate, up the long driveway. There are clusters of cars parked off to the side. Emily parks in front. "Who are all these people?" Emily asks. Instead of just dropping me off, she gets out of her sob and follows me as I make my way to the front door. "I don't know. Maybe my mom's having some kind of brunch for her friends?" That must be why she was too busy to call me on my birthday, I think bitterly. As we approach the front door, I hear music playing, but it's not coming from inside, it's coming from around back by the pool. My parents never use the pool. They spent a fortune on the damn thing, but they aren't exactly outdoors people. It's an Olympic-sized lagoon-style pool made out of rock, or something that's made to look like rock. There's a waterfall, natural slide, and a large cave for those who want to lounge around in the water without getting a sunburn, or if they just want a little privacy. We head to the side of the house and go through the gate. When we get to the pool area, there's a large gathering of people holding champagne glasses and looking in our direction. The barbecue is going. The smell of cooking meat and garlic salt wage war with my stomach. It gurgles, and I can't tell if I'm just really hungry or getting ready to projectile vomit. I see my mom and dad in the crowd, and I stop. Takes me a second to gather all the faces in my sleepy brain and realize I recognize most of them. There are friends from my old high school and friends from college. Some of the guys here I recognize from the frat party last night. "Surprise!" they all yell in unison, and my headache hates them for it. "How pissed at me are you right now?" Emily says, smirking and shaking her phone. This whole time she's been in cahoots with my parents, planning this thing, and I'm genuinely surprised. Especially when I see Paul standing among my friends and family. Chapter 2. Paul is here. Paul, the king of my wet dreams. The man I want so badly it hurts both physically and mentally when I think I might not ever be able to have him. The guy who didn't return my text. Shit. Believe me, I've been ghosted a time or three, but never by someone I cared to see the next day, and not by someone who also just happens to be my dad's best friend, someone I will eventually have to face in person. I just didn't think I'd have to face him so soon after such an embarrassing text. I know my face is 50 shades of red right now, and I want to jump in the pool to cool it off. I mean, what do you say to someone after a text like that? I weave my way through the throng of guests. I say hi to my mom and try to avoid looking over by the pool where Paul and my dad are talking. It's difficult because Paul looks edible. He's wearing blue and white board shorts, chest smooth and tan, arms taut with muscle, showing off all his ink. And not blotchy, ugly tattoos left over from his youth either. These are genuinely amazing art pieces he spent a fortune on. It's so shocking to see because he's always so put together around my parents, wearing suits and designer clothes. Sometimes I forget he even has tattoos. He turns to toss a ball to one of my cousins in the pool, and on his back there's an entire ocean scene with sharks and coral. The details are flawless, right down to the drop shadows and sun ripples in the water. That is a body I want to explore. I want to walk right over there and lick every square inch of him. My dad is also a handsome man and manages to look elegant even in swim trunks. It's the way he holds himself. Straight posture, shoulders back, his chin just a little higher in the air than everyone else. Maybe that's why he seems so much older than Paul, even though they're the same age. Paul is so much more laid back. I manage to kind of not stare at Paul, but once in a while I forget myself and glance over. His eyes latch on to mine. Even after I look away, I feel him watching me, and my heart drums in my chest as I make my way to the bar for a glass of champagne. I'm going to need it. I try to ignore the heaviness of his gaze while I sip Dom, though at the moment I'd prefer an ice-cold beer, but that's not on the menu. Hair of the dog. I still feel like shit from the night before. Except now, I can add humiliation to it. Which pisses me off because this is the first surprise party I've ever had and I want to enjoy myself. Nursing my drink, I make my rounds, catching up with people and thanking them for coming. I smile and nod as my high school friends tell me about their new jobs and plans for marriage, and all the other stuff I've always dreamed about for myself. I do my best to share in their happiness, but I'm having a hell of a time trying to concentrate when Paul is nearby. "Rachel!" I hear my dad call out to me. "Come over here and say hi to your Uncle Paulie. He drove all night to be at your party." He drove all night? Maybe he didn't get my text after all. Or maybe he drove all night to be at my party because of the text. I try not to get my hopes up. Relax and don't say or do anything stupid, I tell myself. There's something skeevy about my dad calling Paul my uncle. And yet, in some perverse way, I kind of like it. Don't get me wrong, if past royals taught us anything with their clubbed feet and genetic deformities, it's that incest is bad. But a little bit of kinky fantasy never hurt anyone. Anyway, I try to play it cool when I head toward them, like, whatever, you're here, no big deal. And it kind of works, until I trip over my dad's fat poodle lounging by the pool and nearly fall in. Paul catches me by the arm before I go into the water, and he hauls me onto my feet. That Harry Potter invisibility cloak I asked for on my 11th birthday would come in real handy right about now. Damn dog, I mumble. My dad loves that mutt. He takes him everywhere with him and calls him my brother. If there's one friend who outranks Paul in my dad's eyes and one child who outranks me, it's Pickles. True to his character, my dad's more concerned about his pet who lays there licking his balls, unfazed by my near destruction.
You okay?
Paul asks. You talking to me or the dog? Someone's trippin', I hear Emily say somewhere in the background. I ignore her, but remind myself to strangle her later. Paul chuckles, and the deep rumble of it touches me in a place not even my favorite dildo manages to reach. The gentleness in how he holds my arm and the way he's looking at me. Jesus, this isn't good. I'm a fumbling mess whenever he's around.
Did we finally manage to surprise you for once?
My dad asks. I smell whiskey on his breath and cigarette smoke in his hair. He only smokes when he drinks. If my mom knew, she'd kill him. He looks over at Paul.
We've never been able to keep a secret from this girl. Even at Christmas, she used to open her presents while we were asleep, then spend all night rewrapping them so we wouldn't notice. Who knows how many years she got away with it before she was finally caught on the home security system.
You know I hate surprises, I tell him. But I actually like this one. My parents have never been able to pull off a surprise party in the past, but I suspect this was Emily's doing.
Anyone want a refill?
My dad asks. He lifts what's left of the amber liquid in his glass. He's drinking hard alcohol, I realize. This is going to be some kind of party. Not sure if that's a good thing or bad at this point. My dad is unpredictable after a few drinks.
I'll take another scotch on the rocks,
Paul says. I show my dad my full flute. I'm good for now. By the way he shuffles his feet, it's not his first drink of the day. It's kind of hilarious seeing someone who's usually so poised let his guard down. That only happens when he's with Paul. You know he's going to forget about that drink as soon as he gets to the bar, I say.
I know. I'm not even drinking.
Paul's smile is all glistening white teeth and dimples.
Come here and give me a hug. I haven't seen you in ages.
His hair has more silver in it than I remember, but it doesn't age him like it would other men in their barely 40s. He's one of those guys who started going gray young. Better than losing it, which he hasn't one bit. It's thick and wavy on top, and damn can he ever pull off the silver fox look. Doesn't hurt that his baby blues are the same color as the water and shine against his tan face. He could so be one of those older hipster models you see in high fashion ads these days. The Miles Better types with less facial hair. As soon as his arms are around me, I'm melting. His hands rub my back, warm breath on the pulse of my neck. He smells like sun and chlorine and coconut from the pomade in his hair. I want everyone else to disappear so I can be alone with him. The text starts running circles in my head. Will he bring it up, or should I? Or should I just leave it alone and hope it goes away? Ugh.
I can't believe how grown up you are.
He steps back and studies me.
21 already. Time flies,
he says. I've been grown up for a while now.
I've noticed.
His eyes shift to my breasts for a brief second before finding my eyes again. He shrugs his lips, as if embarrassed for looking. I wish I would have worn something a little more revealing than the university t-shirt I threw on this morning to get manicures. I can only imagine the horror show he sees in front of him right now. All I did this morning to get ready was shower, brush my teeth, and throw my hair into a messy bun. I'm the epitome of lazy college student at the moment, with my blotchy face I spent the morning picking at, down to the Uggs on my feet. I look like a hot mess. Before I can respond, my mom comes up to us. "Go get your suit, Rachel. Everyone wants to swim a while before we do cake." "I didn't bring a bathing suit." Emily comes up behind me. "Don't worry, I have you covered." We head upstairs to my childhood bedroom. Emily pulls out the tiniest bikini I've ever seen. It's black and made of string and an inch or two of fabric. The butt area is practically a thong with thin strings attaching it to the triangle in front that barely covers me. It's a good thing I got that Brazilian. The top half of the suit is more string than fabric and does a shoddy job at being an actual functioning garment. If I'm not careful when twisting my torso, my areolas will show. There's no padding either, so it shows off every bump and curve. "You're insane," I tell Emily. "I can't wear that. My dad will have a heart attack." She smiles mischievously. "Don't worry. I thought of everything." She hands me a lace cover dress to go over the top of it until I get in the pool. I get dressed and we head downstairs. Paul is already swimming when we go outside. With my sunglasses on, I can stare openly and not be obvious about it as he glides seamlessly through the water. I can't think of anything more satisfying than the look on his face when he finally sees me. With my dad preoccupied beside the booze, I take off my cover, and Paul's eyes grow wide, mouth opening like he's about to belt out a big note. He's lucky no one's splashing or he would drown. Emily is beside me in a modest one-piece and a pair of shorts. She's always been self-conscious in a bathing suit. "Good thing I brought out the big guns. Did you see the look on his face?" With a quiet catcall whistle at me and a slap on my ass, Emily flits off to talk to the boys she invited. I sit on the edge of the pool with my feet dangling in, adjusting my body to the temperature. It's 100 and too fucking hot out, and I can already feel the sun burning my shoulders. I'm slathering 50 SPF banana boat on every exposed piece of skin because I have the complexion of a Tim Burton character, and this bathing suit would make hilarious tan lines. The point is to make Paul hot if he ever sees me naked, not make him laugh. His body glistens wet, his hair slicked back. After a few minutes of staring, he finally swims over to me and props his arms on my knees. Having him this close to me with so little fabric between us spins my naughty thoughts into overdrive.
"How's school going?"
he asks, looking up at me and squinting so that I can see just a drop of those impossible blue eyes between his thick lashes. I can hardly think straight with him so close. He's one fine wine I'd like to taste. Maybe lick the rim, drink too much of, get drunk on. He looks all King Triton with his wet skin, silver hair, and muscles. "It's fine. How's work?" He used to own his own construction company here in town, but he sold it suddenly 2 years ago and moved away. I don't know what he does for a living anymore. I don't know much about his life at all except what little my parents tell me. Since moving, he's been like a ghost. For the longest time, it was as if he went out of his way to avoid me, which is why I'm so surprised to see him here at my party. That first year of him being gone, I dug through the archives of my brain, wondering if maybe I'd made him mad somehow. Then I started wondering if it was because of a woman. I'd been a jealous wreck, but my dad had insisted it wasn't, even though he wasn't exactly sure why he'd moved either.
"Fine,"
Paul says and smiles up at me. He visibly swallows and his smile falters when he asks,
"So, do you have a boyfriend yet?"
He looks around at all the cute guys Emily had invited.
"I bet they're eating out of your hand, especially when you wear things like this."
He tugs at the string of my bikini top, loosening it. "Why, jealous?" I say, only half joking.
Maybe a little.
Well, I don't have a boyfriend. But there is someone I've had my eye on for a while. I suddenly become self-conscious and ask, "What about you? Do you have a girlfriend?" I chew on the inside of my cheek as I wait for him to answer. What if my dad had been wrong about him moving to be with someone? I don't know how I would handle that kind of news. Of course I would be crushed, and I don't know if I ever really thought we could be together, but as long as he's single, there's hope. When he simply says,
No.
my breath leaves me in a rush and my shoulders rise now that the weight has been lifted off. He asks more questions about school and the classes I'm taking. Our conversation comes easy, and I realize I'd forgotten how effortless it has always been to talk to him. That was a big part of his appeal growing up. I was always an awkward girl without friends, taller than nearly everyone else my age, hitting puberty before everyone else. And yet, with Paul, I never felt weird or out of place. He's always made me feel special. We're interrupted when someone suggests a chicken fight. The pool is full and people are making teams. Paul says,
How about we show these rookies how it's done?
let's do it. I slip into the water and the cold is perfect on this sweltering day. I feel weightless, and not because I'm floating in water. It's such a relief that Paul and I are back to our normal flirty selves, and I've almost forgotten about my hangover and the drunk text. He ducks under the water, and when he comes back up, I'm lifted onto his shoulders. Water cascades down my back and breasts, running onto him. I brush my fingers through his salt and pepper hair, pulling it back away from his eyes. When he looks in either direction, the stubble of his face tickles the insides of my thighs. I start to wonder if he can feel how hot my opening is against the back of his neck, if he's as conscious about how close his mouth is to it as I am. He caresses my shins beneath the water where no one can see, raising goosebumps and sending chills through me. I touch his earlobes, massaging them between my fingertips, and there's so much sexual tension between us, I'm sure others in the pool can feel the charge in the air. When the game starts, I'm having more fun just sitting on his shoulders than I have in a long time, and it's nice to forget about school and bills and all the other grown-up stuff that bogs me down on a regular basis. We make a great team. Emily and her future one-night stand are the only ones who come even close to knocking me off Paul's shoulders. Paul and I kill it at chicken fighting and are the victors every time. When we're done and everyone else starts to leave the pool, he ducks back under the water, no longer between my legs, and I miss him there. I make my way to the cave to get out of the sun. It's quiet and dark, away from the prying eyes of everyone else. Paul ducks beneath the water, and when he comes back up for air, he's in the cave with me. He lifts me up into his arms, cradling me.
Remember playing Superman when you were a kid? He asks.
Don't do it, I say, laughing, but I'm already being tossed in the air before I'm finished protesting, making a huge splash when I land. Coming out of the water, my top slips. Not all the way off, but enough for the pinks of my areolas to show. I'm mortified, cupping my breasts. Paul comes up to me and removes my hands. The suit is literally hanging on by my nipples. He adjusts the triangles of fabric to cover me, fingers grazing my collarbone as he moves them up to tie the strings tighter.
Oops,
he says with a wraith of a smile. They keep trying to escape, I say about my breasts.
Maybe you should let them off the leash once in a while.
His smile stirs the beast between my legs. It wants out. It wants to devour Paul. Maybe I will. I act like I'm about to take off my top. He watches intently to see how far I will actually go. When I drop my hands without taking off my top, he says,
Tease, and splashes me.
We take turns dunking each other under the water, which, for me, and probably him too, is just another excuse for us to touch. He's flirting in a way he never has before, a hand brushing slyly against my breasts, my ass. I do the same to him, too. He lifts me, this time grabbing between my legs, fingers digging into the fabric. It's so startling that I don't scream or make a noise when he tosses me. When I come out of the water, I wipe my eyes and we both just stare at each other, his gaze bright and wanting. I'm finally feeling bold enough to go up to him and tell him how much I want him, but then my mom calls out, "Everyone out of the pool! Time to cut the cake!" The little water world Paul and I had been in, where only the two of us existed, starts to break up and scatter. The noise of the party and the fact that my parents are here slips into my reality and kills the mood. Disappointed by the intrusion, I start to get out. I'm halfway up the ladder when I notice Paul isn't following. "Aren't you getting out?" I ask.
"No, I'm not, thanks to you and that bikini."
I feel myself blush, and I have to admit, I do look pretty good in this bathing suit after all those kickboxing classes I've been taking. "What, this old thing?" I say, and pull the fabric of the bottoms into my crack so that it looks like a thong. Paul reaches out and slaps my bare ass cheeks with a loud thwack. I let out a sound of surprise, something between a yelp and a moan at the sudden sting and pleasure of it. The pain soon warps into wonderful warmth and a throbbing sensation. Suddenly, I'm picturing myself naked and draped over his knee while he spanks my butt until there are pink handprints left behind. Our eyes meet, and his are hooded, watching me with obvious lust. If I wasn't surrounded by my family, I'd fuck him right here and now. I stammer. "I'll go get you a towel." I grab a towel off one of the lounge chairs and he's out of the water. As I walk toward him, the shape of his erection beneath his board shorts is right there in front of me, straining against his waistband. He gives me ample opportunity to take it all in before reaching for the towel in my hands. And believe me, there's a lot of it to take in. Maybe more than I can handle in one sitting. He's definitely bigger than anyone I've ever been with before. I'd like to find out just how much my body can stretch. Feeling exposed, I put my cover-up back on and walk to the table where my mom is lighting candles on my cake. Everyone sings the birthday song. My dad sings the loudest. He's definitely drunk. He's not the singing type. I pass him another drink. As soon as he's drunk enough, my mom will insist on taking him upstairs and putting him to bed to stave off any kind of embarrassment. After cake, a group of us play rummy while Paul and my parents catch up. I feel him watching me. Every time I look up, his eyes are right there and he offers me a smile. The wind starts to pick up and the temperature drops. Those still standing after the unlimited supply of alcohol make their way indoors. It's only a handful. Emily and her admirers, my parents, and Paul. Most of my friends leave early since there are tests tomorrow morning. We all drink more and talk. Paul huddles with my dad in their man corner, laughing and talking about old times. I steal glances at Paul and marvel at the way he commands a room with his quiet confidence. How everyone leans forward to hear what he has to say. There's just something about him that demands attention without saying a word. And yet, there's not a single arrogant bone in his body. He's truly beautiful. Around midnight, Emily goes home with a cute guy who sits in the front of several of my classes. It's nearly 1 a.m. when my mom declares it's time to take my dad upstairs. "I should probably get home," I say. "Why don't you just stay the night here?" my mom suggests. Staying with Paul under the same roof while I'm amped up? That's probably not a good idea. I don't think I'd be able to control myself. With all the security cameras in the house, most of which I know the locations, but some of them I don't. It would be too risky. I can't, I say. I told my neighbor I'd feed her cat while she was out of town. Let me put your father to bed, then I'll drive you home, my mom says. It's fine, Mom. I can take a cab. Paul's deep voice next to me.
I'll take her. I haven't been drinking. It'll be safer that way.
I pull in a breath and hold it until my lungs feel like they might explode. Safer for me, maybe, but who will save Paul from me when I get him alone? Are you sure? My mom asks. You just got into town. I can't ask you to do that. Her words lack any sincerity. She doesn't want to go anywhere, but I know she will if she has to. Yes, he's goddamn sure. Go to sleep already. I bite the inside of my cheek to hold back my words.
I insist,
Paul says. He looks at me with an intensity that weakens my joints. After saying goodnight to my parents, Paul and I leave. His truck is blocked in, so we take my mom's Mercedes. The entire ride to my apartment is filled with casual conversation and minor flirting. I start to wonder if that's all this is for him, harmless fun. But then I think about the way he slapped my ass in the pool and how he touched me. Even if it is harmless for now, I have a feeling he'll change his mind in the right setting. We get to my apartment. I'm afraid he's going to drop me off and leave, but he turns the car off and says,
"Let's see this place of yours."
We walk up the stairs and I open the door. I have to kick my shoes out of the way to clear a path for us to walk. It's a mess. Sorry, I say. I haven't had the chance to clean lately. Whenever I'm not at school, I'm at work. He smiles.
Don't worry about it. I was a student once, too.
I have to run next door and feed the cat. I'll be right back. There's beer and soda in the fridge if you're thirsty. I run next door, fumbling with the key. I don't know my neighbors all that well, so it was a bit of a surprise when she asked me to go inside her place and feed her cat while she was gone, but whatever. The bowl is still half full, the cat lazing on the couch, not even acknowledging my existence. I hurry and fill the bowl with food and the other with water and head back to my apartment. When I come back, Paul is in the kitchen filling the sink with soapy water. What are you doing? I ask.
Helping you out. It's your birthday. Take a load off.
I'm not going to argue. There's something kind of sexy about watching a man clean.
That was some party,
he says over the clank and clatter of dishes being washed. The sound is so jarring and real, and for the first time as an adult, I have him all to myself. I can have him. I know I can. I just have to be brave enough to take what I want. I watch his shadow move across the floor and say, I was genuinely surprised. Mom and Dad and even Emily are usually always so predictable. I'm glad you came.
Me too,
he says. Shaking out the nerves, I push out my chest and raise my chin. I'm a Viking, a raider. He's mine. I'll beat him over the head with a club and drag him to my room if I have to.
Cute apartment,
he says. He wants to make small talk, and that's fine, but we can do that after several orgasms. Right now, I have the female equivalent of blue balls and an itch that desperately needs to be scratched. I poke my head around the doorway. Not exactly the charging Viking I'd pumped myself up to be. I'm getting to that. Baby steps. Thanks. Watching him move around my kitchen, I can imagine domestic bliss with him, rubbing his feet at the end of a hard day's work, putting a baby to bed, then making love all night. Imagining what it would be like to warm his bed every night has all the pent-up tension from the day starting to drip down my leg. I go into the small kitchen. It's a hideous, tight space with black and white checkered laminate flooring, crooked cupboard doors, and chipped countertops. We can't move without bumping into each other. I slide in behind him, holding on to him and pressing my breasts against the tight column of muscle in his back. He stiffens and makes a noise in the base of his throat I just barely hear over the sound of the faucet running. "Sorry," I say, squeezing past him. "I need to get a glass." When he tries to maneuver out of my way, stepping behind me, I press my backside against his groin, pinning him against the fridge.
"Rachel,"
he says, voice low and cautious.
"We can't."
There's no conviction behind his words. He puts his hands on my hips as if to push me away, but makes no attempt at stopping me as I arch my back and begin rolling my hips, cradling his growing cock in the cleft of my ass. He groans and leans forward to press his lips against my neck.
"We shouldn't,"
he says this time. Can't and shouldn't are two very different things. I close my eyes as he begins to rub against me. "But it's my birthday," I say. He turns me around so that I face him. His eyes narrow, chest rising and falling as if he's forcing himself to breathe. A tug of war plays out on his features, the pull between lust and guilt. I watch his battle until finally he swallows and crushes his lips against mine, kissing me. He takes my bottom lip between his teeth, gently nibbling and sucking. I moan into his open mouth. The tip of his tongue darts out, finding mine, tentatively at first, then winding together. His tongue ripples over mine, gliding across my teeth and the ticklish spot on the roof of my mouth that raises goosebumps over my entire body when touched. He grasps the sides of my head, holding me like I might take flight if he were to let go, and it seems entirely possible because I'm buoyant, floating. Inside, my body and mind are a perfect storm where everything is crashing together and coming apart and completely obliterated. No one has ever kissed me like this before, with such desperation, and I know that no other way of kissing will ever be satisfying after him. He will ruin me for everyone else who comes after. That thought is terrifying because I don't want there to be anyone after Paul. For me, it's always been about him. It will always be about him. I will chase this feeling to the end of the earth. When we break for air, lungs heaving, I touch his abs, brush the tips of my fingers lightly over the muscles that cobble his stomach, caressing the micro hairs. He shivers and leans forward, kissing my eyelids, my forehead, nose, chin. He kisses me everywhere on my face but my mouth, teasing me, sending me through the ceiling. One hand cradles my head while another slides down my neck, down the middle of my chest, stopping on my ribs. He lifts my swimsuit cover to my waist and slips his hand beneath it. His thumb just barely touches the soft swell underneath my left breast around my bikini top. His skin is hot. Heat radiates into every part of me. His entire hand rests on my right breast now. I lean forward, encouraging him to grip me or squeeze, but he's taking his time, savoring this. It's a slow, agonizing exploration. This is the first time our age difference has become obvious to me. I'm used to young men my age diving right into the deep end without taking the time to get used to and enjoy the water. Part of me wants him to just rip off my bathing suit and be inside me already. But then this will be over, this lovely torture. He's watching me, our eyes locked together as his hand slides lower, touching the front of my bikini bottoms. I'm breathless as I wait for him to make his next move. He must see the anguish I'm feeling, because his lips move into a teasing smile and he asks,
"Is this what you want?"
Moving my hips, pushing myself into his hand, I say, "More than anything." His lips crash against mine in a fevered kiss. As he rubs me through the fabric, I make gasping, yearning noises. He takes my tongue, sucking on it.
"You're so wet,"
he says, more to himself than to me when he releases my tongue. And I can't say anything because I'm off in some euphoric land that, up until now, I thought was just a myth talked about in romance novels. "I want you inside me," I beg. I've never been good at waiting. Even though I'm sure prolonging these feelings will be worth the wait, I don't know how much more of this teasing I can take. Just as his fingers start to move under the fabric, I hear the front door to my apartment open on whining hinges. The moment he hears it, Paul hurls himself away from me like he's been shot, his eyes wide. He looks almost confused seeing me standing in front of him. "Rachel, are you here?" Emily's voice calls out. "I forgot my dorm key." "It's okay," I tell him. "It's just Emily." But when I go to take his hand, he moves it out of my reach. Scrubbing his hands over his face, he sighs and says,
"I'm sorry, Rach. This shouldn't have happened. I need to go."
"No, wait," I start to say, but he's already out of the kitchen. He rushes past Emily, who looks at me, then at Paul, then at me again, and her mouth falls open. Once he grabs his keys from the hook beside the door, he's gone without even looking back. "Oh my God, what just happened?" she asks. I sigh. "I don't know. Everything was perfect. We were, getting there. Then he heard the door and completely panicked." I plop down on the couch and cover my face with my hands. Now he's probably never going to talk to me again. Emily sits beside me. "I'm so sorry. I fucked up. I should have called first." "It's not your fault," I say, though it kind of was. Still, if he wasn't feeling it and things went farther than they had, he might have looked at me like that after sex and I would have felt 10 times worse than I do now. "Want some ice cream?" she asks. What I want is to call him and find out what the hell just happened. But instead of being that girl, I decide it's probably best to drown myself in sugar rather than do something I'll probably regret later. Chapter 3. It's been 2 days and I haven't heard from Paul since he escaped from my apartment without so much as a wave goodbye. I know he's still in town because my dad called, asking if I wanted to go out to dinner with them last night. But I couldn't go. If Paul doesn't want to see me, I'm not going to force myself on him, no matter how badly I wanted to accept the invitation. In class, I can't focus, which is crazy because English is my favorite subject, but all I can think about is where exactly I went wrong with Paul. Things were going so great. Then, as soon as there was a distraction, he looked at me as if I were a leper. We've spent the last couple of years flirting, which felt like years of foreplay building up to the moment we finally found release. Now I can't help but wonder if, for him, the fantasy was better than the reality. I feel stupid for not thinking about that consequence. Rejection sucks. It sucks even worse when the person rejecting you is someone you might actually, dare I say it, love.
"Rachel?"
My self-pity party has crashed when I hear my name. Looking up from the window, I see the entire class staring at me and Mr. Oliver standing by my desk. A pretentious academic, his brow beatings are stern enough to leave a bruise. I don't know how he can stand to wear that tweed jacket in this heat while I'm sweating oceans wearing a tank top. He bends over my desk to look out the window.
"Is there a riot out there? Someone streaking, perhaps?" he asks.
My face is so hot it's numb. I know I'm a horrible shade of pink. "Not yet, but I'll keep an eye out just in case," I say, which gets a few snickers from my classmates. Mr. Oliver is not amused.
"Is my lecture boring you?"
I shake my head. "Not at all."
"Then why don't we leave the daydreaming for the musicians and artists, shall we?"
says the man who moonlights as a creative writing instructor at night. Looks like I won't be taking that class anytime soon. Mr. Oliver goes back to his lesson, despite the boy next to me reeking of BO and the girl on my other side grinding her teeth. I'm able to concentrate long enough to make it through the class. At noon, Emily and I meet up for lunch at a pizza joint down the street. I'm a nervous eater, so I order way more than I should be eating by myself. "You know what you need," she says. I take a giant bite of pepperoni with extra cheese and talk with my mouth full. I'm all ears. Because bad advice is better than nothing, and bad advice is all Emily has ever given me. You need rebound sex. A group of boys walking by slows at the mention of sex. I stare them down until they move on. Don't you need to be broken up first for rebound sex? Paul and I were never dating. Doesn't matter, she says, popping a grape in her mouth and squirting me in the eye with the juice when she chomps down. She laughs, but keeps talking. Just hear me out. I sigh, wiping my eyes. The answer is still no, but keep talking if you want. I'm too busy making out with this pizza slice to care. Without skipping a beat, she says, I know you like your guys with age spots and pumped full of Cialis, but there are guys at this school who are perfectly capable of doling out orgasms. I throw my crust at her. She laughs and tosses it to the pigeon stalking us. There's this guy Jeremy who was at your party, and I have it on good authority that he's really into you, and that he has Thor's hammer hidden in his pants, if you know what I mean. If I roll my eyes any harder, they'll fall out of my head, I say. I'm not asking you to fall in love, just go on a double date with me and Chris. Maybe get laid and forget about Paul for a few hours. I have no idea who Chris is, but getting away from the apartment does sound good. The thought of sitting on my couch alone, binging Netflix and Skinny Cow ice cream sandwiches makes me want to curl up and cry. It's so depressing. I'm young and fairly attractive. Well, at least 3 weeks out of 4 before PMS breakouts make me look like I have a case of the Black Death. I should be going out, having the time of my life while I'm unattached and at an age where it's still acceptable to make terrible decisions. I should be experiencing different guys. Fine, I'll go. But I'm not promising sex with this guy, so don't even plant the thought in his head. I would never, she says with her hand to her chest in mock exasperation. I'm already starting to regret this decision. I've never been on a blind date before. Jeremy is tall, wide-shouldered, and narrow-hipped with a prominent brow and piercing eyes, a Zac Efron doppelganger who I definitely could have seen myself with had Paul not returned. We go to dinner, a nice little authentic Italian restaurant in the valley. It's a double date, but we sit away from Emily and her date so that we have a chance to talk and get to know each other. I learn that his dad is a veterinarian, but he would rather go into sports medicine rather than follow in his father's footsteps. His favorite band is, I don't remember. I'm really trying to make this date work, but I just can't. I put my chin in my hands, pretending to hang onto his every word. Emily is all smiles at the other table. I feel her eyes carving out a hole into my skull to see my thoughts. When I glance over at her, she looks mighty proud of herself. She texts me under the table, bragging about her skills as a Cupid. Every time I feel my phone vibrate, there's always the hope that it's Paul. After dinner, Emily slips me a condom, even though I have plenty at home, before they leave. I can't bear to tell her I'm not interested. Jeremy drives me home and walks me to the door. He leans against the door jamb. It was really nice seeing you again, he says. I wanted to talk to you at your party, but that older guy you were with never left your side long enough to give me a chance. Though Jeremy looks like the kind of guy made of Hollywood magic, I hadn't noticed him at my party. He is only familiar to me because we have a class together. I hardly notice him now, and it doesn't help that I'm distracted by thoughts of Paul, Our time in the pool together, the way he'd touched me in my kitchen, the desperate, needy way he'd kissed me. Right. Him, I say, wishing he hadn't brought up Paul because now he's all I can think about. For a second there, I was doing a fairly decent job keeping him out of the front lines of my thoughts. He's a family friend and is only in town for a little while, so, you know.
Yeah, no worries. I'm just happy I'm getting my chance now.
Sorry, bro, but you never stood a chance, I think to myself. Talking about Paul only makes things worse. My self-esteem has plummeted faster than the pound on the stock market after Brexit. I feel like shit, and I could really stand to have someone worship me right about now, even if it's only for 10 minutes, 20 if I'm lucky. I debate inviting him in, but I don't think I'm ready for that. I don't stop him when he kisses me, though. It's a nice kiss, a lingering peck on the lips. Helps, too, that he smells fantastic and tastes like the fruity Moscato wine we had at dinner. I have one hand on his chest and one on the doorknob. It's the moment of truth. Will I or won't I? There's a pause as he waits for me to invite him in. In the end, I just can't do it. When I don't extend the invite, he says,
I had a nice time. I'd like to go out again if you want.
I nod. I'd like that. He smiles at me and waves goodbye. I go inside. My apartment is quiet and already I'm lonely. I know I'll spend all night waiting for a text or a call that will never come, and I'll feel even worse than I do now. After I change out of my clothes and into a tank top and pair of shorts, I wonder if it's too late to catch Jeremy before he gets out of the parking lot. Just as I'm about to send him a text, there's a knock on my door. He must be reading my mind. I know I'm about to make a huge mistake, but I open the door anyway. It's not Jeremy. My heart thrashes out a nervous beat in my chest. Paul, what are you doing here? Suddenly I'm on the verge of tears, and I feel really stupid for getting emotional. I hold it in the best I can, but my chin is quivering and tears warp my vision. He's wearing a gray pullover, worn jeans with holes in the knees, and boots. He looks so fucking good. Hands in his pockets, he asks.
Can I come in for a minute?
I steel myself with a deep breath and try to regain some composure as I open the door for him. He smells like coconut again when he passes me, and something else that I can't quite place, but it's so distinctly Paul that I get wobbly from wanting. It's as if I were cast from a Jell-O mold. He wanders over to the couch, patting the seat next to him. I sit down and chew a corner of my thumbnail.
I'm sorry for leaving so abruptly the other night,
he says. He sounds upset and maybe a bit sad. I want to comfort him because I'm feeling those things too. Only there's a touch of anger mixed in with those emotions that keeps me from wrapping him in a hug. My foot bobs. I chew on the inside of my cheek, a nervous habit that sometimes leaves the skin raw and sore. I'm sad that he left, but I'm also mad that he left me hanging there like an idiot. Why did you leave? I ask, words outlined in anger. He flinches and looks at his hands. He has the decency to look ashamed.
Several reasons. 1, I'm too old for you. And 2, you're my best friend's daughter. Your dad has been there for me through every part of my life. We didn't have the best upbringing. All we had was each other. When we got older, your mom and dad paid for my contractor's license when I was just starting out, even though your dad was barely making minimum wage and taking care of a teen wife and an infant. How do you think they'd feel if they knew I was falling for their daughter? I've watched you grow up.
He's obviously struggling, and I don't want to be the cause of his inner turmoil, but I can't help cling to the words I've been dying to hear. My voice wavers when I say, Okay, 1, I decide who's too old for me, and 2, you're falling for me? He closes his eyes, leans back against the couch, and puts his hands in his hair.
Why do you think I moved away? I was falling hard and fast for someone I didn't dare pursue. I had to get out of town as fast as possible before it was too late.
I clutch my stomach, feeling as if I'd just dropped from a precipice I'd been hanging onto by my fingertips. I thought you moved to be with another woman. His eyes flutter open as he looks at the ceiling, avoiding eye contact with me.
The only woman I want to be with is you.
He reaches over, moves the hair off my shoulder, and runs a finger down my arm, making me shiver.
I've been sitting in your parking lot for an hour, trying to build up the courage to tell you that. When I saw you kissing that kid...
He swallows hard and clenches his teeth, the muscle rippling along his jawline.
It took all I had inside of me not to get out of my truck and pummel him. I don't think I can bear to ever see you with anyone else.
My heart jackhammers so loud and furious I can barely hear my own thoughts. I climb onto his lap, straddling his waist. I don't want to ever be with anyone else. I rock my hips against him. He holds onto my legs, lifting his groin to apply more pressure. I gasp at the sensation. We grind together, finding the rhythm that nearly sends me over the edge. With one swift, effortless move, he lifts both of us off the couch. I wrap my legs around his waist and hold on, sucking on his earlobe and kissing his neck as he carries me to my room. The bedside lamp is on. Normally during sex, I'm more of a lights-off kind of girl, but I want to watch this, witness the coupling I've been dreaming about since puberty. I've imagined this moment with him since I started masturbating, and now I want to watch it all play out in real time, not missing a single moment. He sets me down gently on the bed and climbs on top of me, propping himself on his elbows to hover over me. A lock from the coif of his hair hangs down, dangling between us. I reach up to smooth it back. His finger traces the curve of my cheek and chin. I try to memorize everything about him, the strip of gray in the stubble under his lip, the slight downturn of his nose, the way one of his eyebrows sits just a little higher than the other. I want to hold on to it forever. The scar cutting into his left eyebrow, the slight lines around his eyes. And my God, those eyes! I've heard people compare him to Gerard Butler with Bradley Cooper eyes. Right now, I can kind of see it.
Your skin is so soft.
His low voice is just above a whisper. He kisses the corner of my mouth.
And you taste so good.
The way his lips just barely graze mine sends chills through me. We're hardly touching, and yet I feel him in every part of me.
I haven't been able to stop thinking about how wet you got the night of your birthday. You smelled so sweet on my fingers. I'm dying to taste you.
His words and the slow sensuality of his voice opens a faucet inside of me and soaks my panties. It's as if his words are a spell and he's conjuring it out of me. I can't take it anymore. Reaching up, I grab the sides of his face and push my lips against him. His mouth is so much bigger than mine, and he's forceful and demanding when he kisses me back. Though I'm no delicate flower, I feel dwarfed beneath him. Knowing that he can take whatever he wants from me, fold me any which way he chooses, has me all kinds of wet. I nibble and suck at his bottom lip, then bite him just a little. He lets out a lecherous grunt and smiles hungrily around my wanting, busy mouth as he grips the hem of my tank top, yanking it up and off of me. He breaks away from our kiss to look me over. I'm not wearing a bra, which is unfortunate because it would be one more thing to tease him with. That small disappointment is soon forgotten as his fingers tickle my stomach, bumping over my ribs up to my breasts. He kneads at them affectionately. Squeezing my nipple between his fingers, he sends a bolt of lightning through my belly button and deep into my groin. I don't know if I've ever been this wet for anyone else before. This is just what Paul does to me. As he sucks, pulling nearly the entirety of my small breast into his mouth, my eyes roll back in my head. I fist the sheets as his hands roam to the waistband of my shorts. He pulls them down to my ankles, and with a flick of my foot, I kick them the rest of the way off. His exploration leads to the sensitive skin of my inner thigh. I spread my legs further apart, as far as they can go, opening myself up to give him plenty of access. He runs a wide, blunt-tipped finger over the wet fabric of my black lace panties. As I relax into his capable hands, a surge of lubricant flows from me. He toys with the fabric edge around my legs before moving it to the side, exposing my pink, swollen folds. He lets out an appreciative sound and says,
"God, you have the prettiest little pussy I've ever seen."
I gasp as he pushes a finger into me, and then another. Slow at first, then feverishly, causing delicious sucking noises. He hooks his middle finger at the perfect angle to massage my most tender spot. This is a man who knows his way around a female body. Arching my back, he pushes his fingers deeper inside of me. I crave release, but before I get there, he slips his fingers out, taking hold of my panties, ripping them off. He drops to his knees, pulling me toward him so my ass is hanging off the bed. He pushes my legs up so that my knees are resting on either side of my face. With a flat tongue, he massages the sides of my clit without touching the too sensitive mound, a trick the other men in my life couldn't seem to learn. He's not in any hurry. He's here to please me. Unlike my last boyfriend, who'd been afraid of my vagina, having no idea what to do with it. No matter what I taught him, he continued to be in and out, only caring about himself. Paul's tongue dips in and out of my opening. I raise my head to see what I can. All these years picturing him between my legs, and finally he's right there. It's better than anything I imagined. The way he touches me, the feel of his skin against mine, it's all so real, as if I'm experiencing everything for the first time. He pulls back to catch his breath, a string of my wetness and his saliva linking us together. He licks his lips, breaking the connection. His respite lasts only a second before he's diving back in for more, lapping at my labia like a starving man. I hold my breath when his tongue moves further down my crevice to my asshole. At first I think it's a mistake and that he didn't mean to do that, but his eyes are open and he knows exactly where his tongue is and what he's doing. I suck in a surprised breath. Wasn't expecting that. Luckily, I'm very thorough when I wash. My first instinct is to stop him. I've never had a man's face down there before, and though his tongue is lush and he's driving me fucking crazy, and I'm more turned on than I've ever been in my entire life, I don't know how to handle this. "Whoa, wait," I say, and start to scoot away from him, except he holds me by the legs so I can't move.
"What's wrong?"
he asks. "Nothing's wrong. I just never had anyone's tongue there before."
"It doesn't feel good?"
"It feels amazing. It's just different." A lopsided grin pulls at the corner of his mouth. His face inches closer and closer to me, tongue slowly extending from his mouth until the tip just barely touches my asshole again, sending shockwaves through me.
"I could stop, if you want," he says.
I open my mouth to speak, but then he does something with his tongue that melts my brain and makes me forget everything I was about to say.
"Relax,"
he says. Our eyes meet. God, he's gorgeous. He strokes the insides of my thighs and says,
"Don't think about what I'm doing. Don't think about anything, just feel it. And if it feels good, let it happen. Trust me.
I do trust him. Nodding, I lay my head back and release my muscles from their rigid hold on my limbs and just enjoy him, what he's doing, and oh my God, it's everything. I had no idea being with someone could feel like this, and we haven't even had sex yet. I'm going over the threshold, I realize, and beg him not to stop. He works enthusiastically at my clit with his mouth and tongue, sucking it between his lips, while 2 fingers from one hand drills into my pussy, and this thumb from his other hand massages the outer ring of my asshole. I've never had anyone touch me there before either, and I have to admit it feels pretty damn amazing. I can feel my orgasm coming from a faraway place, rushing toward me at a furious pace until, like an earthquake, it hits me with full force. Sparks of glittery light flash in front of vision, and I'm thoughtless and dumb, temporarily insane, humping Paul's face as this sensation rocks me to the point of blacking out. I'm holding my breath the entire time, crying out. I have no idea how loud I'm being or if the neighbors can hear me, and frankly, I don't care, because I've just been to another planet, another plane of existence. When my orgasm finally starts to ebb, I'm left useless and shaking. I open my eyes and my vision is blurry. Paul is moved to my side, elbow crooked, resting his head in his palm and watching me with a teasing smile.
You okay?
He asks. I can hardly get words out through my shattered breaths. Holy shit. He laughs and starts to say something else, but I'm peeling off his shirt and kissing him before he can speak. I can smell myself on his lips, and it's glorious and peachy tasting, and I lick it up. Though I'd just had a life-altering orgasm and still have ringing in my ears from it, I'm ready for more. This thing, whatever it is that's happening with me and Paul, it's dangerous. It's addictive. I pull him to his feet, and his smile grows at my eagerness. I kneel before him and hook my fingers into the waistband of his jeans and pull them down to his feet, releasing him. Jesus, he's big. Bigger than I'd imagined. How the fuck is he still single? This isn't the type of fish one throws back. This sucker is the one you get stuffed and mounted on the wall to show off and brag about to your friends. I run my hands up his long, tattooed legs. Gripping his steel-hard cock with both hands, he rolls his head back and lets out an approving groan. I practically have to unhinge my jaw like a snake to fit him into my mouth. Pre-cum drips from the spongy tip, and I lick up every salty drop, massaging the cashmere underbelly of his beautiful prick with my tongue. He holds the sides of my head, fingers wrapped around my ears, and pushes deeper into my throat. My eyes water and drool leaks from the corners of my mouth as I swallow him down. As long as I relax my throat, he glides in easily, and soon he's fucking my face with vigor and I'm loving every inch of him. Just when we find our rhythm, he pulls out, and I take a long breath. He takes me by the armpits and hauls me back onto the bed. He kicks off his shoes and socks and climbs onto me. Watching my face, he slides into me, cautious, as if he's afraid of hurting me. I'm stretched to my limit, but it's good, really fucking good. Slowly, he picks up the pace until he's using my shoulders for leverage to slam into me. Our skin slaps together with each forward thrust. I've never been noisy in bed. I've always been skeptical of those who are. I mean, it can't be that good, right? Wrong. So very, very wrong. Having him inside of me, stretching me, pulsing and aching for me, I can't help it. I open my mouth and I'm calling out, "Oh, yes! Fuck me! Harder! Yeah, right there!" I'm making ridiculous noises that in any other context would be comical. The dirtier my words, the more it seems to feed his lust. He flips me over onto my stomach, hips up as if I were a doll that weighs nothing. He spanks me hard on the ass. I lurch forward and cry out.
"So you want to fuck, huh?"
he says, tangling his fingers in my hair. So he did get the text after all. I was starting to wonder if it went through. "Yes, please fuck me," I beg. He spanks me again, and I yelp and smile into my pillow. He's so possessive in the bedroom, so unlike his normal demeanor, and I'm loving this side of him. I can definitely get used to this. I let out a long, loud moan when he enters me from behind. It's always been my favorite position. The most direct path inside with the least resistance. As he drives into me, the head of his dick presses against my cervix, causing tendrils of pain with pleasure. The blinds are open in my room. I usually close them right before bed. Anyone looking in will see my sex face, but none of that matters to me right now. The heady scent of sex fills the room, pushing me to the brink. My second orgasm rips through me with hurricane force. As my muscles start to contract around his width, Paul lets out a primal roar and unleashes his warm seed inside of me. We stay that way, locked together for several minutes as we come down. We're breathing heavily. He is draped over my back, kissing my spine, and then we collapse. He cradles me in a spooning position. I'm glad he can't see the ridiculous smile I feel stretching my face. He strokes my hair with his fingers, untangling the sweaty strands.
"That was amazing,"
he says. I turn over to face him. His eyes are hooded, face groggy. "It was more than amazing." A stream of cum rolls down my leg, and it hits me suddenly that we forgot to use a condom. I mentally make a note to get to the pharmacy in the morning for a morning after pill. As I kiss his forehead, cheeks, lips, and chin, his eyes meld shut. He pulls me closer to him, and before I know it, I fall asleep in his arms. Chapter 4. I wake up the next morning to the droning buzz of my alarm clock. The room is filled with light without the blinds drawn, and I'm completely naked. I'm still in the same position I was last night when Paul and I fell asleep together. Trying not to wake him, I peel his arms off of me and slide out of bed.
"Do you have to go?"
he mumbles to my back as I put on my robe. I look over my shoulder at him. He has one eye open and his hair's a mess. Utterly adorable. "Yeah, I have exams." He grumbles and sits up, looking around my room as if he just realized where he was for the first time.
"Where's all your stuff?"
he asks. "What do you mean? What stuff?" He closes one eye and takes inventory of my belongings.
"You have a full-sized bed, a table, and a lamp. Where's your dresser and all your clothes? There's no pictures on the walls or things to decorate and make the space your own. You're like a tidy homeless person."
I smile, but he's right. It's been so long without acknowledging the things I like that I've managed to lose interest in and even forget everything other than school and Paul. "My clothes are in my closet."
"In that shoebox?"
he asks, frowning at my closet that's just big enough to squeeze a body in. If it were anyone other than Paul, I might have taken offense. I shrug. I don't need much. Truth is, I can't afford much, and I refuse to have my parents help me, not that they actually would. Even after loans, grants, and scholarships, being a student pays hardly anything at all. My part-time job at the coffee shop around the corner from the campus pays just enough to cover utilities and food. I have to keep telling myself that someday, when I have my degree and the job of my dreams, all the struggle will be worth it. Is all he says. I need to go get my shower, I say, heading for the bathroom. I've just started washing my hair when the sliding door to the shower opens. Paul steps in behind me, lacing his fingers with mine, and starts to work the shampoo into my scalp. When he's done, he takes my loofah and douses it in my green tea body wash, lathering it up before starting at my shoulders.
"I love the smell of this soap. It smells like you," he says.
He takes his time, making sure every inch of my skin is clean. His warm body presses against me, his firm cock sliding between my soap-slick ass cheeks. I'm under the shower head now, bubbles going down the drain as I rinse off. He gently bites my shoulder and reaches around, ring and middle fingers on either side of my clit, rubbing in soft, slow circles. My moans echo in the tiled bathroom. I lift my foot onto the lip of the tub to open myself up and give him better access. The head of his cock pushes at my asshole. I push back against it, but it won't budge without lube, which probably wouldn't feel good anyway, so it's better to leave it alone. Instead, he uses his free hand to guide himself to my fleshy opening. I'm still a bit sore from our encounter the night before, but as soon as he's inside of me, all pain is forgotten, and only desire is left behind as he works me over. My palms flat against the wall, I let the water roll down my back and enjoy the sensation of being stretched. His grunting becomes animalistic as he starts to thrust harder. He puts his hand on my back, bending me over. That amazing pain is back as his rigid prick bottoms out. I'm crying out for more, screaming for him to fuck me hard.
"God, you're so tight,"
he says, tearing into me, almost as if he too were in pain. He slides in and out of me before turning me around and lifting me off the ground. My arms are around his neck, legs around his waist. He pushes my back against the wall, holds my ass in his hands, and somehow manages to hold me up and fuck me like that without any help from me. After 10 minutes, the water is losing its heat, but his pace hasn't. He has the stamina of someone half his age, and the strength, too. Like a puppet with wires, he positions my body whichever way he desires, and I'm perfectly happy to let him do so. With one of my legs on the floor, he lifts the other, holding it in the crook of his arm, and enters me at a side angle. It's a direct hit to my G-spot. He nails it every time, tapping my button like it's an O key stuck on a keyboard. 3 more pumps, and it's game over. My screams rise to an almost deafening pitch as my orgasm takes hold, making me faint and lightheaded. The moisture in the air hurts my lungs as I try to catch my breath. He's still inside of me when he turns off the water. He kisses me more, staying inside of me. When he finally pulls out, a torrent of our mixed fluids spill out of me and splash against the bottom of the porcelain tub. I'll definitely hit up the pharmacy after school. At least I think I will. I'm taking the bus home, and I'm not sure it goes in that direction. If not, I can always get Emily to take me tomorrow. My muscles and body are still wrecked when he takes my face in his hands and kisses me deeply.
"You're going to be late for school."
"I know," I say and kiss him again. I don't want this to end. I'm tempted to just not go to school, but my GPA depends on the results of these exams. It was so worth it. I clean myself up, dress, brush on a coat of mascara, and say goodbye to Paul before leaving the apartment. In the halls, several of my neighbors, all female, are outside talking to each other. I'm not all that close with any of them, even though we go to the same school. I've never taken much time to say much other than hi and pet the one woman's parrot. I've always wanted to live in a neighborhood where everyone knew each other and had the other's backs, but I never got the vibe from these people that something like that would be an option, other than the neighbor whose cat I'm watching. From the day I moved in, I had the feeling that they had a clique and I wasn't invited in. It's like high school all over again. Some things never change, I guess. When they see me, they bend their heads, whispering and laughing. "That must have been some party last night," one of them says to me. Great, they heard me. I knew I was being loud, but I'd hoped I wasn't being that loud. Gossip spreads around this complex like wildfire, and before long everyone will know. Oh well, it wasn't as if I'd dragged some one-night stand to my apartment, like I almost did and had my way with him. I had an amazing night with the man I care about, and I'm not going to pretend as if I hadn't, and I'm definitely not going to apologize for it. I know I'm blushing without having seen my face. Nosy broads. Instead of staying embarrassed and letting these girls get under my skin, I say, "You have no idea," and exaggerate bowed legs as I walk down the stairs. "Someone's looking happy," Emily says as we leave class. I'd arrived 5 minutes late and got nasty glares from Mr. Oliver, but nothing could kill my mood. "That's because someone got laid," I say. Emily slaps my arm, eyes wide. "Tell me everything, spare no details." Normally I get annoyed by the bump and grind in the hallways as students scurry to their next classes, but nothing can bother me today. "A lady doesn't kiss and tell." "I know, so tell me everything." We head toward economics, the other class we share. In fact, it was how we met in the first place. We sit down in our seats next to each other, and I tell her everything. I meet my dad for lunch. He takes me out once a month. It was my mom's idea. She thinks it will bring my dad and I closer together. She's tirelessly optimistic. All my dad ever talks about is how hard he had to work to get the things he has and how he's doing me a favor by never lending me money, which I never ask for. If I did, he'd hold it over my head like a wrecking ball. We sit down at a diner and look over the menu. He talks mostly about work. I pretend to listen to him for the most part and just try to enjoy the free meal. I'm only half listening when I hear the tail end of what he just said.
"And Paul stayed out all night. I wonder what he's up to."
My French fry gets caught in my throat and I have to pound my chest with my fist to swallow it down. "He probably hung out with other friends," I shrug, as if I couldn't care less. "So, what do you and Mom have going on for your anniversary? That's coming up soon, right?" I say, trying to get off the subject of Paul.
"We have the same friends. He would have told me. When I called around looking for him last night, no one had seen him."
"Someone's a little clingy," I tease.
"Please stop talking about Paul. He's staying at my house. The least he can do is call me and tell me he's not coming home so I can set the alarm. Besides, he's only here for a day or two, and we have plans."
"That's it? All the time I have left with him is a day or two? Of course, my dad will most likely hog every minute of it." Dad waves a waitress over to refill his drink. When I was a kid, I always hated it when he did that. The waitresses were busy and would get to us eventually, but my dad never has the patience to wait. I still hate it, even as an adult, but I'm more concerned about what's happening with Paul to care. I don't want Paul to leave, and I can tell my dad, in his own pig-headed way, doesn't want him to leave either. But he would never come right out and say it. He's too proud for that. But he's also a different person when Paul's around. Lively, younger. He smiles more, glares less. If it were up to my parents, they'd have him move in.
"I don't know why he has to leave at all," my dad says.
"I'm sure he needs to get back to his job and his life."
"I don't see why. It's not as if he has to work."
"Why not?"
"He sold that construction company of his for several million and made a killing on investments. He wouldn't have to work another day in his life if he didn't want to. But the guy likes to get his hands dirty."
I nearly choke on the hamburger I just took a bite of. Paul's worth several million? How did I not know that? Then it hits me. Dude, I just slept with a millionaire. Seems like I should be more excited about that part. It's just one more thing to brag to my friends about at gatherings. While everyone else is telling their wild tales, I'm always the one who shrugs and says, "Not much," when they ask what I've been up to. Also, what girl doesn't want a guy with some ambition, as well as one who doesn't live with his parents and forgets to bring his wallet on dates? Yet, I'm mostly just excited about the man I slept with, not his money. I shake my head and take a deep breath to clear my mind. Suddenly, the food in my stomach feels like a ball of lead. "If you're so upset about it, convince him to stay," I tell my dad.
Believe me, I'm trying. But I couldn't convince him to stay the first time, and I doubt I can this time. What he needs is to fall in love and settle down with someone, plant some roots."
I couldn't agree more. Chapter 5. I don't have a car. Well, I did, but ended up selling it for a few $100s. I was lucky to get that much. It was an old Datsun that was literally held together with duct tape. At least the doors and windows were. Some things had to be sacrificed to get my apartment. Gas and insurance were expenses I just couldn't afford. Normally, Emily gives me a ride home from school, but she had somewhere she needed to be, so I'm taking the bus. It's about an hour trek across town when it would only take 10 minutes by car, if that. At least the weirdos riding with me are entertaining. As I'm walking out to the parking lot, I see a tank-sized pickup truck with a lumber rack taking up 2 spaces in the lot made for eco-friendly subcompacts. Paul is standing next to it with a fistful of lilies. This contrast of soft and hard is almost jarring to the eye. My heart jumps around in my chest. I should not be this happy to see a man who's going to bounce out of my life just as fast as he swept in. "What are you doing here?" I say, trying to maintain some semblance of keeping my shit together. He hands me the lilies, our fingers grazing as I take them. His hands are the only thing even remotely aged about him. They are calloused and scarred from a lifetime of hard work, building things and putting them together, making sure everything fits just right. But it's exactly those flaws that make them sexy as hell. He kisses me lightly on the mouth, then follows up with a peck on the nose. When we separate, people are watching us. They probably thought he was my dad before that kiss. But since Paul doesn't seem to mind what people think, I sure as shit don't either.
"I want to spend some time with you out of the bedroom."
He nudges my shoulder playfully.
"Until later, that is."
A swarm of pterodactyls rises up in my stomach. I'm beyond butterflies at this point. At least I have the promise of another night with him. I'll take what I can get. He opens the passenger side door and I get in. It's an older pickup with the black paint chipped and peeling. The interior is ripped up and dirty and smells like gasoline and burned oil. The floorboards are covered in chunks of dried cement and drywall dust. The whole thing just oozes testosterone. He could afford any vehicle he wanted, according to my dad, yet he sticks with tried and true. I find it so endearing that I can't help but look at him adoringly with a stupid smile on my face. "Where are we going?" I ask.
"It's a surprise."
He drives with one hand loose on the steering wheel and the other dangling out the open window. There's something arousing about a confident driver. Or maybe I'm just really horny. Doesn't seem to matter what Paul does. It's all a turn-on for me. He heads for the freeway. On our way, we drive through one of the oldest neighborhoods in town. There are a lot of Victorian homes in this area, their paint salt-bleached and flaking off from the harsh winds coming off the Pacific. On a cliff overlooking the ocean like a stern nanny is a Gothic Victorian home I've always been obsessed with my entire life. As a girl, I thought it looked like a giant dollhouse painted white with pink gingerbread trim. The colors leave something to be desired, but it's impossible not to see the beauty beyond that. "That's my dream house," I tell him, pointing to it. His gaze follows my pointed finger. He raises his brows.
"Really? Looks like a place someone was probably murdered in.
I laugh. It really is in bad shape. It has been vacant more often than not. I imagine the previous owners who'd bought it had done so with the hopes of fixing it up to its former gone-with-the-wind glory. But once they realized the staggering amount of work that would need to go into it, the for sale signs were back up in the yard again. It does have a bit of American Horror Story curb appeal, I admit. But I love it. It's different from all the other houses around it, and that view. I could stare out those windows and be content for the rest of my life.
Those old homes have good bones. Old things aren't always useless,
he says, winking at me. He reaches over to where my hands rest on the seat and wraps his fingers with mine. I look at our intertwined hands, again the contrast of hard and soft. His tan hands against my pale ones. It's so comfortable and effortless. It feels as if we're old pros at this whole being together thing. We chat easily as we drive down the freeway, and even when we're not talking, I feel completely content next to him, just staring out the window and listening to the low growl of the diesel motor. We've been in the truck for half an hour when he pulls off into a town that is so small it has one exit. If you blink, you'll miss it. The entire town consists of a motel, gas station, Denny's restaurant, and a furniture store. I doubt he took me out of town to eat at a rundown diner, and he has plenty of fuel, so that leaves the motel and the furniture store. Since my apartment gives us plenty of space to hook up without getting caught, my only conclusion is that he's looking for furniture, and my heart lifts because it possibly means he's moving back to town. He parks right outside the furniture store and we walk inside. It smells like pine and varnish. Everything is hard, heavy woods, handmade. I'm stunned at how beautifully crafted everything is. IKEA, eat your heart out. What are we doing here? I ask.
Just looking.
He takes my hand and we wander through the store. We stop in each department, kitchen, rugs, dining room, living room, and he asks my opinion on different pieces that he likes. It's all beautiful to me, but I tend to like the more weathered, beachy items better. Eventually, we end up at the back of the store. We go through a door, and I'm not sure we're supposed to be back here. But when the man carving wood at a saw table looks up, he smiles and said,
"Paul, hey man, I haven't seen you in years."
He takes off his protective glasses and reaches out his hand for Paul to shake. He's a hippie-looking older guy in his 50s, a big Lebowski type with long dreadlocks wearing tie-dye.
"Did you finally move back?"
Paul looks at me, then back at his friend, ignoring the question.
"How's it been going? The place looks great." "Same old thing every day."
His friend looks at me and smiles.
"And who's this goddess on your arm?" "This is Rachel, my—"
He hesitates a moment, and I think he's about to introduce me as his best friend's daughter, but he utterly stuns me and says,
"My girlfriend."
I blink away the shock on my face. Girlfriend? Really? Did I miss something? Don't get me wrong, I love the sound of it, but it kinda comes out of nowhere, and I'm trying to figure out if he meant it, or if it was just easier to introduce me that way rather than explain our unique situation.
"Finally,"
his friend says, shaking my hand.
"I thought this guy was a terminal bachelor. Nice to see he's calming down in his old age. So, what can I help you with?" "Well, Rachel has terrible taste in furniture, what little of it she has."
I roll my eyes. What little furniture I have was all I could afford, and I worked really hard at figuring out the instructions and putting it all together with a tiny Allen wrench by myself, thank you very much. I may have spent a total of $200 on my furniture in my apartment. These homemade beauties are definitely not in my price range. I look up at Paul, frowning. What are you doing?
"I'm buying you furniture."
I know we can afford it, but why? Because we had sex? It feels like a strange gift.
"She seems to like the driftwood pieces best,"
Paul tells his friend.
"Good choice. I think I can help with that," the man says.
Paul is relentless. I keep telling him no, it's too much, but he's not having any of it. He refuses to leave the store without buying me an entire bedroom set, including headboard, bedside tables and lamps, and a dresser. He tries not to let me see the price tag, but I sneak a peek at the receipt while he's helping to load it in the back of the delivery truck, and it's in the thousands. I want to tell him he doesn't have to buy my affection, or whatever else he's getting from me. But we are having such a good time, and I love being around him. I'm afraid that bringing up money will put a damper on things. I thank him profusely, and we head back toward home. I thought we were going back to my apartment, but he's not done spoiling me yet. We have a couple hours to kill before the delivery truck makes it to my apartment, and he's dragging me around to clothing stores to fill up my new dresser. He's so stubborn, and I'm kind of having a pretty woman moment in the store, trying on all these clothes while he waits outside of the dressing room to give his opinion. Thankfully, he manages not to make me feel like a call girl. Instead, I just feel special. It comes as no surprise that he likes the skimpy items best. Honestly, I do too. While we're out, he insists on buying me proper school supplies rather than all the crumpled notebooks and chewed-up pens and pencils he saw on my kitchen counter the first time he was over. It really is too much. I tell him so several times, but he pretends to be old and hard of hearing. Eventually, I just go with it, because it's easier than arguing with him.
I think that's everything unless you can think of anything else you need,
he says when we're back on the road. Well, there is one more thing, I say. He pulls over and gets out of the truck.
You drive. I'll go wherever you want.
I get behind the wheel and have to pull the seat all the way forward and adjust his mirrors. Not having a vehicle has left me slightly uncomfortable behind the wheel, especially driving such a big truck. Once I get my bearings, learning where the turn signals and lights are, we're on our way. He's looking curiously around, trying to figure out where we're going.
Oh yeah, I should have known we were heading to Chuck E. Cheese,
he says when the big smiling mouse billboard comes into view. I laugh. Maybe I'm dropping you off at the Sizzler for the early bird special. Do you get senior discounts yet? 'Cause you might be handy to have around.
If you're not careful, I'll bend you over my knee.
I remember the brief spanking I'd received in the pool at my party and in bed, and I feel a jolt of excitement between my legs. Don't make promises unless you plan to keep them. He chuckles and pats me on the leg, leaving his hand there. His thumb caresses my knee while I drive. My destination is near my apartment, about 2 blocks away down a narrow alley, away from the public eye. When he realizes where I'm going, he laughs and says,
Oh yeah, definitely better than Chuck E. Cheese.
I park in front of Hush, a small adult novelty store. We get out and head inside. I'm carded to make sure I'm at least 18, which Paul finds amusing. The place is packed with rank, hairy men that look as though they bathe in Crisco. I feel eyes following me through the store. Paul must notice it too because he puts a protective arm around my waist, and we walk like that the entire time.
So, what are we looking for here?
He asks with a boyish smile touching his lips. I pick up a large bottle of strawberry-flavored lube. Oh, I don't know. Just browsing, I say in the same casual tone he'd used on me in the furniture store. I put the lube back on the shelf with the others. From the corner of my eye, I watch him pick it back up and carry it with him.
By all means, take whatever you want,
he says. I'm looking at a wall of vibrating eggs. He grabs one off the shelf that has a cord and battery pack. He's like a little kid in a candy store, stealthily putting things in the cart after his mother had put it back on the shelf. Next, I make my way to the toys. There are all kinds of dildos, little, big, and absolutely brutal. I pick up one shaped like a fist and fight laughter when his eyes stretch to fill his face. He says,
Trust me, that won't fit.
He leans over and whispers in my ear, tickling my skin.
I'm lucky that tiny little hole of yours fits me. Very lucky.
He kisses me on the jaw, and I'm starting to wonder if we'll even make it to the apartment before I maul him with my vagina. I have a lovely collection of my own dildos, and they're all quite junior compared to the Fist of Fury. So I bypass those and finger a pair of fuzzy handcuffs. Looking back over my shoulder, Paul's eyes are ballooning out of his head again, and he's overeager when he says,
Yes, grab those now.
I giggle and take them off the shelf. By the time we get back to my apartment, the delivery truck is waiting outside. Paul and his friend unload everything and start carrying the dresser upstairs. I rush ahead of them to unlock and open the door. When I get to my door, Jeremy is leaning against the door jamb.
Jeremy, what are you doing here?
Hearing my surprise, Paul looks around the dresser and almost drops his end.
Steady there,
his friend says. Paul gives Jeremy an intimidating look and tells his friend,
I got it. Keep going.
As he passes Jeremy, Paul gives him a nod that lacks any friendliness. Once Paul and his friend are inside the house, Jeremy says,
I couldn't stop thinking about you after our date. I was going to text before coming over, but I wanted to say this in person.
He reaches out and touches my fingers, hooking onto them. I want to pull them out of his grip, but Jeremy seems like a nice guy, and I don't want to make a big deal out of this, even if I can feel Paul's eyes at my back. I glance behind me, just to confirm, and there he is at the threshold. His hands are tucked protectively in his pockets to hold himself back, his jaw clenched as if he's ready to toss Jeremy down the stairs. Paul and his friend make several more trips up the stairs, slowing down when they get near me and Jeremy. I suspect it's to eavesdrop. Jeremy seems oblivious to the intrusion and says,
Let me take you out again. I can cook this time. I make a mean fettuccine Alfredo.
Paul has come to a complete stop, and his friend seems just as intrigued by my conversation with Jeremy. Paul looks ready to launch out of his skin. You're a really great guy, Jeremy, I say. And I had fun last night. But I have a boyfriend now. I glance over at Paul, and his stunning blues meet my gaze, and he drops an inch of height as his body relaxes. I grin at him, and he shows a ghost of a smile as he goes back into the apartment with the last of the furniture. I like the sound of that word in my ears when referring to Paul. Boyfriend. I like the taste of it on my tongue.
A boyfriend?
Jeremy says, taken aback.
That was quick.
I'm sorry. I should have told you before. We'd both been into each other, but neither of us were brave enough to say it until last night after you dropped me off. He hangs his head and smiles sadly.
Damn. I knew I should have asked if I could come in last night.
He sighs and looks back at me.
Well, good luck. But if things don't work out with you two, call me.
I'll see you in class, I say, and watch him walk back down the stairs. Paul's friend passes me on his way to his truck.
Looks like we're all set. Enjoy the new furniture.
I will, thank you. It's gorgeous. Back inside my apartment, Paul waits for me. I walk up to him, put my hand on his chest, and push him toward the bedroom. On the way, I pick up the bag of toys we bought at the adult novelty shop and bring it with us. His smile lights up the dim room. I turn on the light because I don't want to miss a thing. At first, I seem like the one in control, pushing him around, but as soon as the cuffs are out of their package, he takes over, cuffing me to my old headboard. He wastes no time getting my shorts and panties off. My shirt and bra are pushed up to my wrists. Leaning back, he takes in my nakedness, Adam's apple bobbing in his throat as he devours me with his eyes.
Spread your legs for me,
he demands. I do as he tells me, opening my legs as far as they'll go so he has a perfect view. He tilts his head to the side, his lips slack and partly open, as he examines the delicate skin between my legs. It turns me on even more, being watched and seeing the front of his jeans grow tight from his erection. He strips out of his jeans and begins slowly stroking himself as he examines me. Even with his massive hands wrapped around himself, his dick still looks huge. As far as dicks go, he has a nice one. The head is large, but not too big so that it hurts. It turns a deep pink when he's turned on. The velvety smooth shaft is long and thick and perfectly proportionate to the head. After a minute, he stops his own pleasure to tend to me once more. His hands massage and tickle the sensitive skin of my labia, stopping just short of entering me or touching my clit. He's so disciplined, never in a hurry, building these feelings into a furious storm before allowing me to get any relief.
I can smell your soap on your sheets on your old bed,
he says. My eyes flutter open at the sound of his voice. You were in my room? My room at my parents' house is exactly the way I left it before moving into my apartment. Even my diary is still stuffed under the mattress. The one that has Paul's name scrolled through it 1,000 times, talking about all my childish daydreams of our wedding, the names of our future children, all the sexy things I wanted to try that I'd seen in porno videos or magazines. I still have dirty laundry there, my laptop that has naked selfies on it, which thankfully is password protected. Everything that could possibly humiliate me with Paul is in that room, and he's had plenty of time to go snooping. He's looking curiously at me.
I couldn't help but think when I sat on your bed that this was the same place you used to touch yourself when you were first discovering new sensations to your body. The same bed you snuck a boy into while your parents were asleep downstairs, and he put his fingers into you for the first time.
My eyes open wide. How? I start to say, but remember my diary. He continues.
It was where you put a hairbrush handle into your ass to see what it would feel like, and discovered your new love for ass play.
He takes the bottle of strawberry lube he bought and drizzles it onto his fingers. The tart candy scent fills my nose. Using his dry hand, he spreads my ass cheeks apart with his fingers, and with the lubed hand, begins to massage the rim of my asshole. I take a deep breath and let it slowly out, trying to not tense up.
There you go, just relax,
he says when my body starts to loosen up. Still, he doesn't enter me even though I'm ready to accept him.
The same bed,
he continues,
that you laid in night after night, fantasizing about me.
So you did read my diary. I can't remember everything I used to write in my diary, but I never held anything back. Everything I ever felt about Paul was between those pages, raw and unabridged.
It was just lying there. I couldn't help it,
he says. It was under my mattress wrapped up in a sweater. A beautiful, playful smile tilts his lips.
You were a dirty little girl, weren't you?
Maybe a little. I'd always been a good student, excellent with computers, and managed to find my way onto porn sites that I shouldn't have had access to. A girl can learn a thing or two from those web pages. Watching all those women spreading their butt cheeks while men drilled into them planted a seed into my brain that continued to grow over the years. I knew one day I wanted that done to me, and I used to picture Paul as the one to do it. That I remember writing in my diary. Just as I open my mouth to speak, one of his fingers slips past my ring. I suck in a loud breath instead. I'm nervous. I've never done this with anyone before. It takes a moment for me to relax enough for it to easily glide in and out without that feeling of uncomfortable pressure. Once I've allowed myself to completely open up to him, his next finger enters. I'm rocking back and forth on his fingers now. When he bends down, catching my clit between his lips, I'm on the edge, about to go over. But he backs off before that can happen. He's really good at controlling my orgasms.
You like that?
He asks in a sexy, sultry voice. Yes, is all I can manage, because he's reduced me to nothing but coos and throaty noises. From the bag, he pulls out the egg vibrator and turns it on. It's a loud, powerful thing, and I shiver with excitement imagining what he plans to do with it. He douses the egg with lube, and that too goes in my ass. I marvel at the ticklish sensation of something vibrating in there. It feels amazing, like nothing I've ever felt before, and helps my muscles to relax even more. When he pulls it out, my entire body is loosened up, so when he puts the head of his cock into my rectum, there's no resistance or pain. I let out a long moan. He pours more lube onto his shaft and takes his time easing it into me until I'm full. By the time he is sank all the way into me, I'm completely adjusted to this new sensation and feeling more turned on than ever before. He goes slow, pulling out then pushing back in. He adds more lube each time, so each entrance is silky smooth and feels delectable. He lifts my butt off the bed so that he can move deeper into me. As he starts to move faster, humping in and out, I'm going wild. My pussy doesn't need any attention to send me through the roof. He reaches over into my side table and finds one of my dildos. I watch him, eyes wide open as he rubs my clit with the tip. He's going to double penetrate me. Part of me is nervous, afraid it will hurt or won't fit, but I trust him. If it hurts, he'll stop. I'm surprised when he pushes it into me and it doesn't hurt. Not at all. I just feel very full and very sexy, and my orgasm smashes into me. He stays inside me a moment, waiting it out as my muscles clamp down on him. He caresses my breasts with his fingers until my shaking is stopped. He then takes the cuffs off. My strength is non-existent, and I buckle into his waiting arms.
I love how kinky you are,
he whispers in my ear, and there's a smile in his voice. I smile too, but I have no words. My tongue is broken, and my mouth is mush after that gut-ripping orgasm. He rolls over and turns off the light, snuggling up to me. His breath grows heavy, and I think he's falling asleep, but instead he says,
I'm in love with you, Rachel.
I'm frozen in his arms, and it takes a minute for me to find my words. I love you too. At this moment, I can't think of a time I've been happier. The fantasy is definitely not better than the reality. The reality is better than the fantasy ever imagined being. Chapter 6.
I should probably get back to your parents' house before they start to get too curious about where I'm spending all my time. Your mom is a worrier,
Paul says. We're still in bed. We've had sex 2 more times and it's starting to get late. I don't think I have a 4th one in me. I'm exhausted. Welcome to my adolescence, I say. I don't want him to go. I love sleeping in his warm, safe arms. But he's right. My parents, especially my mom, don't know how to mind their own business. They also have a bad habit of showing up places without being invited or calling first. Might look bad if they show up in the morning and find his truck in my designated parking spot after he didn't come back to the house last night. He kisses me before he leaves. I want to tell him I love him again before he goes, but I'm not entirely comfortable just throwing those words around. They weigh a ton and mean everything to me. My neighbors are outside again, watching him leave. It's late, and they're all in their pajamas, holding cups of coffee. It's almost as if they've been waiting up to hear our bedroom theatrics and to catch a glimpse of the man behind all that pleasure. By their swooning smiles and quiet titters, they like what they see. I shake my head and go back into the apartment. As soon as my head hits the pillow, I fall right to sleep. In the morning, I wake up to the scream of my alarm. I'm feeling a little queasy and think it might be best to stay home from school, but I can't. More exams. At least this is the last day. It was supposed to be Paul's last day in town. He texts to tell me that. I'm almost in tears, and I'm afraid I'll be too sad to concentrate on my schoolwork until he texts back saying he's extending his stay. He doesn't say for how long. I know my dad will be happy about that, and my mom will be happy to have my dad out of her hair. Paul has been in town for a little over a month now, and I've had more sex in those weeks than I have in the last 2 years. Seems longer with everything that's happened between us. Every day he comes to the school and takes me to lunch. After school, he picks me up and we spend time together until he goes back to my parents' house at night. It's fine for now, but we're in love and eventually it won't be enough. Luckily, he talks about moving back to town and getting a place of his own. I can't believe he's willing to drop everything and move back. I'm so happy I can hardly stand it. If only we didn't have to hide our relationship from my parents, then everything would be perfect. I'm terrified at the thought of telling them, but if I want to be with Paul, they have to know. I need to tell them soon. Saturday morning, I wake up before the sun is even up. I have to work at the coffee shop. The moment I stand up, the room tilts sideways and the temperature spikes to 200 degrees. At least that's how it feels anyway. My stomach wrenches as if it's being turned inside out. I run to the bathroom and make it to the toilet just in time to vomit. I must be coming down with something. I think about calling in sick, but once I have it out of my system, I'm fine and decide to go in. The bus ride to work seems more tedious than usual. Watching the lights flash by makes me carsick. I've never been carsick before, but I've been on a charter boat in the middle of the ocean and had gotten seasick, and it felt a lot like this. The lights in the bus seem too bright, and someone has a serious flatulence problem. Pop a Beano already, Jesus Christ. If it wouldn't make me late, I'd get off at the next stop and walk the rest of the way. Unfortunately, I can't afford to be late, and so I endure it by pulling my shirt up over my nose. I really need to start saving up for a car. Emily meets me at the coffee shop. She usually spends my shifts sitting at the bar, keeping me company and getting discount caffeine. I feel hungover, and yet I haven't had a drop to drink in weeks. Normally, I make small talk with my morning customers on their way out to work, but this morning, I don't seem to have the patience for anyone. I'm even getting annoyed with Emily as she talks non-stop after several cups of coffee, which I normally find kind of funny. "What's wrong with you?" she asks. "Your face is pale green." If she can tell, it must be bad. "I think I have a stomach bug. I should probably go home. The smell of coffee is making it worse." Emily stands so suddenly it makes my head spin. She makes wide, dramatic, circular motions with her hands. "Oh my God," she says. "What?" "Oh my God!" "Just tell me already, you're stressing me out. What are you oh my godding about?" She hesitates a moment longer before saying, "You're pregnant!" My hand freezes in midair as I'm handing a customer his extra-large peach tea. "What? No, I'm not. I just had my period." I quickly do the math in my head and suddenly my stomach drops. 6 weeks ago. Shit. I'd meant to get to the pharmacy several times, but kept forgetting until after Paul and I had sex. I kept thinking I had plenty of time, and told myself each day I'd make it there eventually. But it seems I may have run out of time. I break out into a cold sweat. "Miss, my tea," the man says. I shake my head, snapping out of my reverie. "Oh, sorry," I say and hand it to him. "We're going to the pharmacy," Emily says. I leave work early. I just can't do the coffee smell any longer. Seeing the green hue of my skin, my boss happily lets me go home. But I don't go home. Emily and I go straight to the pharmacy and pick up 3 reliable brands of pregnancy tests. If I'm actually pregnant, I have no idea how I'm going to tell Paul. I don't know if I could take him flying off the handle or blame me for not using birth control. Although, he didn't do anything about it either. What the hell was I thinking? Oh, right. I wasn't. Not about that, anyway. I was too worried about eye-crossing orgasms. Remember when I said Emily was a better adult than I was? These are the sorts of things I was talking about. My thoughts are on a tilt-a-whirl, spinning through my head until I'm dizzy. If I'm pregnant, what would that mean for me and Paul? What about graduating? I'm so close. No matter what, I'm finishing and getting my degree. And my parents, Jesus, they're going to kill me. We stop at a gas station because I'm too impatient to wait long enough to get to my apartment to see the test results. We have to step through a puddle of beer vomit and over a homeless man lying on the pavement singing drunkenly to get into the bathroom, but I don't even care right now. Emily fixes her makeup in the murky mirror while I pee on each of the 3 sticks. I play Candy Crush on my phone while I wait for the results, panicking when a text pops up from Paul asking where I'm at. He must have stopped by the coffee shop and I wasn't there. What should I say? I ask Emily. I should probably tell him what's going on, but I don't want to worry him unnecessarily if there's no reason for it. The lights flicker and buzz. There's a glory hole in the wall and an advertisement written in black Sharpie that says, "For a good time, call," and someone's number next to it. Great place to find out if I'm pregnant or not. Tell him we're shopping, Emily says. I don't want to lie to him. Emily uses her nail to clean up the edges of the red lipstick she just applied. Fine. Tell him you're pissing on a pregnancy strip at a stop and rob in the slums. I text him back and tell him I'm shopping with Emily. The timer goes off on my phone. Emily and I look at each other. Here we go. It'll be okay, she says without any confidence in her delivery whatsoever. She's trying to be comforting, but right now that's the opposite of how I'm feeling. The tests are on the back of the toilet. I remind myself to stop into the store on the way home for a large bottle of hand sanitizer. I pick one test up and stare down at the little square. It shows 2 pink lines. I grab my stomach. Oh, shit. Emily takes it from me. Holy hell! I pick up the next one, a different brand than the first. It has a plus sign. Double shit, I say. The nausea is back. My breath is coming in whooshes and vertigo is setting in. I try to calm myself by lying and telling myself everything is going to be okay, but I know it's not. Nothing is okay and might not ever be again. The 3rd test simply says pregnant, and all I can think is, I'm so fucked. At home, I need some time alone to process everything and get right out of my head. I decide to watch TV. Maybe some mindless entertainment will help relieve some stress. Except every time I change the channel, there's a cartoon on or a commercial for extra absorbent diapers. Suddenly, everything is about babies. I turn off the TV and curl up in a blanket, even though it's fairly warm in my apartment. Right now, I just need the comfort of it wrapped around me, like my ratty old whoopee from when I was a kid whose corners I used to suck on until the blanket was soaked in my slobber. Time to read a book instead. This was a better idea. A nice horror about a stalker breaking into a woman's house is just what I need. I spend all day reading and have nearly finished the entire thing when there's a knock on my door. I don't want to see anyone. It's probably my mom. She's definitely the last person I want to see. Scratch that. My dad is actually the last person I want to see. What if it's both of them? Where's a tropical storm and road closures when you need it? Filling my lungs with air, I open the door. There's a deep ache in my chest when I see Paul standing there, looking so brilliantly handsome. But this time, it's not necessarily a good ache. Now might be the one and only time I've ever not been thrilled by his presence. He's still lovely and makes me weak in the knees to see him, but I'm afraid. Terrified is probably a better word for it. All it takes is one look for him to know something's wrong with me.
Is everything all right?
He asks, concern knitting a line into the skin between his eyes. He steps past me into the apartment. I close the door behind him and lean against it. My legs are barely holding me up. Yeah, things are fine, I say, voice wavering. Can we talk, though?
Sure.
He starts to head for the couch, but I stop him. Can we go somewhere? I'm sick of being in my apartment.
Of course.
We go downstairs and get into his truck. Before, when I smelled the oil and gasoline, I'd liked it. Now every smell makes me feel sick. The sun is setting. I hadn't realized how late it had gotten. We go to the cliffs on a piece of private property my dad's friend owns. No one ever goes up there, and it's fenced off from the public, so I know we'll be alone without interruption. He turns off the engine and twists in his seat to look at me.
What's this about? You're starting to scare me.
I'm scared too, mostly of what his reaction will be. But I can't keep this from him. I can't seem to get the words out, so I reach into my purse and hand him the 3 tests. He studies them, face unreadable. I'm so sorry, I say. Tears well up in my eyes. As soon as I blink, they streak down my cheeks. I didn't do this on purpose. I would never try to trap you. He still hasn't said anything, just stares down at the tests. Several seconds pass, but they feel like minutes.
Fuck, Rachel,
he finally says, sounding furious. I flinch.
I thought you were breaking up with me. I was half out of my mind.
He lets out a long breath and sinks back into his seat. Wait, what? He's more upset at the thought of me breaking up with him than me being pregnant? So, you're not mad about the... My voice trails off. He starts to laugh. I don't know what the hell is going on. He's not being loud, but it feels that way, trapped in the cab of his truck. He takes my hand, face easing into a smile.
How can I be mad? I'm going to be a dad, the father of our child.
That was not the reaction I was expecting. He unlatches my seatbelt and pulls me toward him, wrapping me in a tight hug. He continues to laugh and pets my hair.
We're going to make great parents. You and this child will never want for anything.
I lean away from him. Paul, I don't know. I have school.
And you'll continue on with school. I'll stay at home with the baby while you get your degree. And if you want to work after that, you can work. Or if you want to stay home, you can stay home. I'll do whatever you want to do.
He leans away from me and takes my chin in his hand, lifting it so our eyes meet.
Rachel, I love you. I want to be with you forever. I want us to be a family.
Suddenly, I see a vision of our little family so clear in my head, and happy tears begin to toddle down my cheeks. He wipes them away with his thumb. What about my parents? I say. His smile falters.
You leave your parents up to me. I don't want you stressing about anything right now.
He presses a delicate kiss on my mouth and down my neck. He takes off my shirt and then my bra and finds a nipple. I close my eyes and bask in the feel of having my breast sucked. That feels amazing, I tell him. He moves to my other nipple, giving it plenty of attention too. By the time he's done, I'm wetter than I've ever been before. I reach over and unbutton his jeans and release his meaty cock. It bounces out from the open hole of his boxer briefs as if it were spring-loaded, reaching up to his belly button. I suck the head of it in my mouth, teasing, running my tongue down his length. His hand is on the back of my head, not pushing me down, but helping to keep the pace. I can tell by the way his hand shakes that he's showing great restraint. He's being careful with me when he doesn't need to. If he wants to fuck me like a porn star, I'm all for it. I come up for air and look at him. Do whatever you want with me. Don't be gentle just because I can take it. He laughs.
You have no idea what you do to me when you talk like that.
I glance down at his massive cock, the way the veins strain and protrude. I think I have an idea.
Open your mouth,
he says. I do what I'm told.
Wider.
He licks his lips.
Good girl. Now suck my cock.
I go down on him, relaxing my throat so he slides all the way in and my lips touch his pubes. I'm able to breathe through my nose and get air around my lips when I open wide enough. He's grunting and moaning, and I gag several times, but it's so hot I don't let go when he tries to stop.
Wait, I don't want to come in your mouth,
he says. This time, I release him and sit up. He smiles at me and wipes my lips.
God, you give one hell of a blowjob, you know that?
He lays me down on the bench seat. It's a big truck, but Paul's a big man and there's not much room. Still, we move easily enough. He takes off the rest of my clothes. Grabbing me behind the knees, he folds me in half, placing my ankles on each of his shoulders. The entire time, his eyes lock on mine. He enters me in one long, slow push. His gaze never wavers as he moves in and out of me in languid swimmer strokes.
You're so beautiful,
he says as he makes love to me. I always hated that term, making love. Sounds sappy and old-fashioned. But this isn't some fast and furious fuck, a race to get each other off. This feels like love. Full and content, and emotional enough to make me cry. I don't do that, though. I'm not trying to scare him away. Instead, I watch his face, long for him, consume him, absorb him inside of me until we melt together into a single organism. Chapter 7. A week later, we go to an OB/GYN for the final confirmation and to make sure everything is okay with the baby. When Paul hears the little heartbeat, he's all smiles and laughter. I'm still slightly freaked out, but once I see the tiny bean in the ultrasound photo, something inside me changes, and everything I thought was important yesterday feels like nothing, because all I care about is the person growing inside of me and the person beside me who helped make him or her. We made that. Paul and I together. That's insane. And scary because I barely know how to use a washing machine, let alone raise another human. Thank God Paul is by my side. I don't think I could do this without him. On our way back to my apartment, Paul says,
"It's time to tell your parents."
I've been avoiding it. I even contemplated waiting until I was too far along to hide it anymore. I just really don't want them to ruin my happiness by telling me what a horrible decision I've made, or by hating Paul. My parents were only 17 when they had me, and according to my grandmother, I ruined their lives and stole all their options. She seemed to believe that since I was born out of wedlock, I'm somehow marked by Satan. My parents insist that's not the case, and that not one day goes by that they regret having me. But I've heard my mom over the years long for the experiences she missed out on. That's why they were so happy for me to get my degree. I wanted that for myself, of course, but they always wanted it just a bit more. I stare out the window at the cars flashing by and sigh. I know. I call my mom and tell her everything over the phone. I can't bear to say it face to face. I have a whole speech written out, but by the middle of it she's asking questions and shrieking, and I end up going completely off script. There's a lot of crying on both our parts. When she asks me who the father is, I hesitate. And then I tell her. The line is dead silent, and at first I think she's hung up on me. But then I hear her muffled cussing and she's back on the phone.
Paul? She says. Your dad's Paul? I'm so sorry, Mom. We didn't mean for things to go this far. But we're in love. You're in love with Paul? Your dad's Paul? I suppress a sigh. Damn it, this is harder than I thought, and far more annoying than I imagined. Yes, Dad's Paul. And what does Paul think about all of this? I glance at him. He sits on the couch, watching my end of the conversation and biting his nails. He's happy. We're both happy. More silence. More cussing. What about school? I'm going to finish school, I promise. There's only a few more months before I graduate. I'll just be in my second trimester at that point, so this shouldn't affect my attendance or grades or my graduation plans at all. Suddenly, my mom squeals. Oh my God, my baby is having a baby! I'm going to be a grandmother! It takes me a moment to realize she's laughing while she's saying this, instead of crying like I initially thought. She starts talking about baby clothes, showers, decorating a nursery. She asks where we plan to live and tells me I sure as hell won't be moving across the state with her grandchild, and that Paul better figure out a way to move back or else. By the time I hang up, my head is spinning. I think Mom's on board, I tell him. Now for my dad. Mom holds my hand while Paul and my dad talk in my dad's office. They've been in there for hours. At first, there was yelling. Their voices were too muffled for me to hear exactly what was being said, but telling by the sounds of their voices, it was heated. More time passes and... Is that laughter? Paul comes out of the office. He comes up to me, leans over like he's about to kiss my lips right there in front of my mom. I turn my head and let him kiss my cheek instead. I'm not quite ready for PDA in front of my parents, even though they clearly know things have progressed beyond that point. Rachel, come in here, my dad says from his office in a flat voice that camouflages his mood. I have no idea what I'm getting myself into walking in there. Every atom in my body wants to run. Instead, I stand on wobbly legs. I'm too old to be running away from my problems. I'm going to be a mother. It's time I learned to face my fears because, God knows, things only get more frightening from here. Paul takes my hand. It's okay. I'll be with you. I slowly walk toward the office and poke my head in. Shut the door behind you, my dad says. Once the door is shut, Paul and I sit in the seat across the large oak desk. It's a beautiful, regal office with stained wood paneling and a floor-to-ceiling library that houses mostly non-fiction about American wars and biographies about generals and world leaders. My parents didn't come from money, but they have plenty of it now. My dad had to work his way from carpet cleaner to owning his own trucking company. All of that while raising a family of his own at the age of 17. He could have walked away, and not too many people would have blamed him for doing so. But he didn't do that. He'd stayed and worked hard and sacrificed to give me and my mom everything we could want or need. Knowing I've probably broken his heart is more than I can bear. I don't know what I would do if he looked at me any differently than he always has. I'm his little girl. I don't want that to change.
He sits behind his imposing desk in a leather high-backed chair. On the desk is a photo of him and Paul at a Giants game. Next to it is a photo of me and Mom. 3 of the people he loves the most, and 2 of those people have betrayed him. He stands and walks around the desk, sitting on the edge beside me. He lets out a long sigh and shrugs his lips. I apologize before he gets the chance to spew venom at me. "I'm so sorry I went behind your back," I say. "Please don't hate Paul. I don't think I can stand it if you 2 weren't friends because of me." He drops his shoulders and glances at Paul before looking back at me.
"I can never hate Paul. He loves you. He's going to be the father of my grandchild and he's family. But I want to make sure this is what you want. You're still young. I don't want you to do anything you don't want to do. You have options."
My heart rises into my throat, and I swallow back tears. "I want this, Dad. I love Paul, and I want to have a family with him."
"And what about school? You have to promise me you won't give up on your dreams."
"I have no intention of giving up anything. I can have it all with Paul's help." He kisses my forehead.
"Paul, can you go get my wife? We're going out to celebrate."
Paul hesitates. I can tell he doesn't want to leave me alone, afraid my dad will say something to upset me. "It's okay. I'll be right out." Paul nods and leaves the room. Once he's gone, my dad says,
"I know I seem like a hard-ass sometimes, and it's hard to be affectionate, but I really do love you."
I swallow back tears, my voice thick with emotion when I say, "I know. I love you too." 3 months later. I'm finally walking down the aisle. Not that aisle. I'm graduating. Friends and family pile into the university theater. The air conditioning is broken. People are sweaty and uncomfortable crammed inside the narrow seats. It's a long ceremony, and I was fairly certain if the valedictorian didn't wrap things up, he'd be heckled off stage. Despite the grumpy atmosphere, I'm relieved. It's been a long 4 years and a lot of hard work, but I've finally made it. The ceremony wraps up, and the crowd roars as my graduating class throws our caps into the air. In the mayhem, I find Paul, my parents, and the rest of my family sitting near the back toward the exit. Once we finally make it out of the clusterfuck of a parking lot, we meet up with Emily and her family at an Indian restaurant. Everyone in my family is giving me gifts. Paul just smirks, empty-handed. "What does that look for?" I ask him.
"You'll see."
I pick at my food. I'm not exactly sure what I ordered, but I think the meat is goat. There's also something with curry and yogurt. Every element on the plate has a mush consistency, and the smell is definitely not working for me. The one and only time I tried Indian food in the past, I enjoyed it. I didn't know what I was eating then either, but it tasted good. Pregnancy has changed my sense of smell and taste. So far, this baby inside of me seems to only like candy bars. That's all I crave, and I'm his or her powerless servant. Luckily, I have Paul around to make sure I have a balanced diet, or it would be all sugar all the time. "What do you mean, I'll see?" I ask. "What will I see?" My mom leans over and with an exaggerated wink-wink says, "He means you'll see later tonight." "Ew, Mom, stop," I said. My dad is not amused. Though he seems happy for me and Paul, and he didn't protest when I moved into Paul's gorgeous apartment, I don't know if he's fully on board yet with us as a couple. That will take time, years maybe. I can only imagine how difficult it would be to see my child dating my best friend. He frowns at my mom.
"Yeah, Sharon, stop."
My mom snorts and apologizes. She's had one too many cocktails tonight. It's still fairly early when Paul and I leave the restaurant. This whole pregnancy thing is wearing me out, and I'm hardly even showing yet. The only physical changes I've noticed is that my clothes don't fit like they used to and my boobs are engorged. There are plenty of other changes, though. The big one I started noticing after the nausea finally wore off is pregnancy hormones. I've heard of expecting women having mood swings and cravings, but no one told me I would be horny as shit 24/7. Sometimes all it takes is for Paul to brush against me, and I'm chasing him down, humping his leg. Seriously, though, all I want to do is fuck. Poor Paul is keeping up, but by the time the evening comes around, he's wrecked. My feet are killing me. Can we go home now? I ask him on the way to his truck. I lean my head against his shoulder and he wraps his arm around me, his hand on my hip. All I want to do is eat a big bowl of ice cream, watch a chick flick, and have sex until I drift off into dreamland.
Whatever you want,
he says. As we drive away, we're going in the opposite direction of the apartment.
Where are we going?
I ask.
You'll see.
He drives through town with that same smirk on his face. He's up to something. Instead of pushing him about it, I lean my head against the window and watch the scenery whip by. I see the sign for the freeway, and I deflate. I really hope he doesn't plan to take me out of town for some kind of graduation surprise. My bladder is the size of a pea these days, and car sickness is still an issue, even if it's not as bad as it was those first few weeks. Instead of taking the freeway, he takes a left into the old Victorian neighborhood. The sun is going down behind the cliffs, the steadfast homes that have been watching over this town from the cliffs for over 100 years live to see another day. The speed limit through this neighborhood is 40, but he's creeping through at a mere 25. What in the hell is he doing? I look over at the house of my dreams and realize there is no longer a for sale sign staked into the lawn. Someone has been hard at work fixing it up since I last saw it. There's a new coat of paint, and all the little gingerbread details that were broken have been replaced. It's stunning. I love the darker gray and the deep purple trim it's been painted. It even looks like the new owners have put in double-paned windows and a new lawn. I'm glad someone finally bought that house, I say, looking at it longingly. It deserves a good family.
Yes, it does.
He pulls into the driveway and parks.
I want to take a peek inside.
When he starts to get out of the truck, I say,
We can't. Someone lives here now.
The porch light is on and everything. He comes over to the passenger side and opens my door for me.
Yeah, we do.
I sit for a moment, trying to make sense of his words. Like, what do those words even mean? I'm so confused, I think I'm hearing things. You're fucking with me, aren't you? I say. He laughs and takes my hand, helping me out of the truck. Removing a key and key ring from his chain, he says,
Welcome home, Rachel,
and hands it to me.
Shut up. This is yours?
It's impossible to contain my excitement. I know my voice has reached obnoxious levels, but I'm having a hard time policing my happiness. Curtains flutter as neighbors look out their windows.
No, it's ours. The place we are going to raise our baby and start our lives together.
The tears start to fall. That's another thing I seem to do a lot of lately, cry. Inside smells like sawdust and fresh paint. It's just as I imagined. Right when you walk in the front door, there's a sweeping staircase and a massive chandelier hanging over it. Wood lace accents are in the corners, and everything is finished off with elaborate crown molding. The arched doorway to my right opens into a sitting room the size of my apartment. I go in there first. There's a fireplace and furniture I recognize from Paul's friend's store. It's decorated in an ocean theme with a lot of white and pale aqua colors as accents. I can't imagine what it would cost to furnish a house like this. The chairs and couches are made to look old in order to match the house, but have subtle, modern details to keep it interesting and from looking like we stepped back in time. Among the ship models, letters in bottles, and matte paintings is our baby's ultrasound photo that has been blown up, framed, and hung on the wall as an art piece. I never would have thought to do something like that. It's a good thing Paul decorated, or I could have had this place looking like a school dorm in no time. It's everything I could have wanted and so much more. I wipe away the tears with the back of my sleeve. I can't believe this. You're literally making all of my dreams come true. Could you be any more perfect? He shrugs.
Maybe. Come look at this view.
He leads me to the back of the house toward the sitting room. I step through the door and lose all of my cognitive abilities. I'm stunned. There are no words. The entire back of the house is made of windows. In the corners are more of the wood-lace details. Some of the windows curve like an old greenhouse so that I can see the sky above me as well. There's a small fenced yard in back. Plenty of room for a garden and playhouse when our child comes of age. The rest of the view is nothing but ocean. The sky is bright blue with low-hanging clouds of pure, fluffy white. In the distance there are sailboats and a charter boat. Farther from that is a shadow of an island. I can't believe this is the view I'll see every day when I come home from work. This is what I will get to look at while I'm feeding our child. I can definitely see myself here with my little family for the rest of my life.
Let's go upstairs. I want to show you our bedroom,
Paul says. We go upstairs. There are more of those Victorian touches all over the house, and the modern ones too. We go into our room. There's another wall with windows, but there are more modern gadgets and decor in here than there is in the rest of the house. Paul pushes a button on the wall, and the drapes start to move from the center of the window to the walls in order to expose the view. In the bathroom, instead of the clawfoot tubs I'd seen in the bathroom we'd passed by downstairs, there's a jacuzzi tub. That will be nice to sit in for hours, and there's plenty of room to fit Paul and I comfortably should we decide to share a bath, which we most definitely will if I have anything to say about it. All the furniture in the room is the stuff Paul bought me for the apartment. He must have cleaned the place out. I can't say I'll miss that place. At least here we can be as noisy in the bedroom as we'd like without getting the neighbors involved. I'm standing at the window looking out when Paul comes up behind me. He wraps his arms around my waist and holds my growing baby belly. It doesn't take much to get me started these days. Just the slightest touch from him can get me in the mood. Hell, even the wind blowing against my skin gets me in the mood most days. It's almost as if my nerve endings grew nerve endings, and they're all on ecstasy. I'm experiencing new touches and feelings for the first time. When he moves his hands beneath my shirt to touch the skin on my belly, I lean against him. My nipples are hard, almost aching, begging to be touched. My boobs have grown an entire cup size. Paul has seemed to make it his personal mission to fit the entire thing in his mouth, like he had when they were smaller, but so far he hasn't succeeded. He brushes his thumb against the taut pink nubs, and that alone turns me into a puddle in his arms. I want you so bad right now, I say. Get naked.
Yes, ma'am,
he says in a deep, breathy voice that drips with longing. As soon as I hear the buckle on his jeans hit the floor, I turn to him and push him back onto the bed, helping him with his shoes and the rest of his clothing. I'm wearing a shirt and skirt, so I'm out of those in no time. As much as I love foreplay, I'm beyond that point. There's a deep craving inside of me, a need for this. Right now, I'm a sex zombie, and only having him inside me will stop the hunger. He's hard and ready for me. I hover over him until we're in alignment, then sink down into him and feel the excruciating relief of having him inside me. Not only are my breasts swollen, but so are my insides. The pillowy flesh of my canal clings to his shaft like a suction cup. Every time I rise up off of him, he lets out a sound that's almost like a growl. Then a long breath of relief when I sink back down.
Fuck, you feel incredible,
he says as I ride him. He holds his hands on my ass to regulate my speed. If it were up to me, I'd be slamming myself onto him, but he's afraid I'll hurt myself in the baby, even though the doctor said sex, even the fast kind, is perfectly safe. Still, even slow and steady is fine with me as long as he's filling me up. I close my eyes and roll my head back, feeling more content than I ever have before. Though being pregnant at 21 isn't exactly what I had in mind for my future, I wouldn't change a thing. This is my happily ever after.
Chapter 8. Paul. 3 months later. I never meant to fall in love with my best friend's daughter. I'd never even been all that attracted to younger women before, and had only dated women my age. In fact, the one date I had got on with someone younger than me, a 25-year-old nursing student a friend of mine had set me up with, I found her to be a vapid, overly exaggerated blow-up doll, without 2 brain cells to rub together. I was truly afraid for those who may one day be in her care. Then Rachel came along. Of course, I'd never thought of her in a sexual way before now. She was just my best friend's cute kid. She was always bubbly and happy, and it was fun having her around, unlike some of the brats my friends had whelped. Then she turned 18, and suddenly, out of nowhere it seemed, she had become the most beautiful woman I'd ever laid my eyes on. I couldn't help but wonder how the hell that happened, and where was I during these changes? Not only was she stunning to look at, but she was hilarious and sarcastic and mature beyond her years. We could be silly and tell inappropriate jokes, or have deep, meaningful conversations that often led to me seeing the world just a little differently than I once had. Even when she was 16 and 17, she would flirt and I wouldn't think much of it. She had a crush on an older man. These things happen. But as this continued into her adulthood, I was powerless to stop myself from flirting back, sometimes even pushing to see how far she'd go. When I realized she would be willing to go all the way, and this wasn't just harmless flirting, my emotions started getting involved. I'd fallen for her. I wanted her more than I ever wanted anyone in my life. That's when I knew I had to leave. In less than a month, I sold my business and my home. I had to get as far away as possible. If I didn't, I knew one day she would break my heart. She'd find some young kid who had more energy and was better looking than me. He wouldn't have the laugh lines around his mouth and the crow's feet around his eyes. Those are stupid, shallow things to be self-conscious about at my age, but I couldn't help feeling that way around her. I couldn't bear to watch her fall in love with someone else, so I left. It was supposed to be a new beginning. I went on dates and found new hobbies and got back into construction. I was supposed to make a full recovery from Rachel. Except, even after I moved, those feelings didn't go away. They didn't even lessen at all. If anything, they grew stronger, because I didn't have those moments of seeing her face to tide me over until the next time. I was completely fucking miserable for 2 whole years. Then I got that text from her in the middle of the night and knew I couldn't fight my feelings any longer. Her dad had been asking me to make it to her surprise party for weeks, but I kept turning him down. But now that I knew she still wanted me, I had to see where this would go. It was the perfect excuse to come see her. I drove all night across the state, only stopping to caffeinate. I never thought that text would lead to this. Us in our new home, and Rachel carrying my child, and me with this diamond ring in my back pocket. I'm nervous. Yes, we're gonna have a baby, but that doesn't mean she'll want to be stuck with me the rest of her life. She says she loves me, but I have a hard time believing she could possibly feel anything close to what I feel for her, that anyone has ever felt love like this before. She stands in front of the windows in our room looking out at the ocean. It's her favorite place in the house. We've been here 3 months already, and it's always where she can be found. It's an overcast day, and the clouds manage to make her skin look creamier than it already does. She's so beautiful, with her long dark hair and big baby bump. There's something I find incredibly sexy about pregnant women, but Rachel is the sexiest of them all. I step up behind her and place my hands on her stomach, feeling my growing child moving beneath my fingers. I'm so full of love for the both of them I could burst. She lets out a content sigh and leans against me. "Are you done for the day?" she asks. I spent the days finishing up the details on the house and making sure everything is perfect for when our child arrives so that I can dedicate all my time to my perfect little family. I kiss her neck. I am. She lets out a hot little moan. "Does this mean I have you all to myself now?" "I'm all yours. But first, I need to ask you something." I kneel before her. Her hands automatically go to her mouth and cover it. She knows what's coming. My heart is racing, and I hope to all that is holy that she doesn't turn me down. "Rachel Holt," I say, my voice catching. I swallow. "Will you do me the honor of being my wife?" Tears pour down her flushed cheeks. She lets out a quick sob and a burst of laughter. "Yes! Oh my God, yes!" I slip the ring on her finger and stand, finding her lips. I lead her to the bed and gently lay her down. Piece by piece, her clothing is removed. I'm a visual creature, and like to take my time exposing each stretch of pale skin. Sometimes my favorite part of sex is the view. Once her panties are off, I kneel on the floor in front of her and spread her knees apart. My breathing grows heavy as I enter my middle finger into her. She makes the most adorable little sounds as I slide my finger in and out of her slick hole. The faces she makes, both focused and abandoned, are the most beautiful of their kind, like the rest of her. Pushing my fingers apart inside her, I look inside the dark abyss, wishing I could crawl inside its silky warmth and live in there. As I spread her wider, her rosy asshole twitches. My balls tighten against me as my arousal grows. I'll need release soon or this could get uncomfortable. Her clit is hard. With a relaxed tongue, I barely brush against it, a teasing dance to drive her wild. Her butt comes off the bed in a humming motion, pussy muscles flexing and contracting. Such a hot pleat of flesh, perfect in every way, as if it were sculpted by a great artist out of the most delicate fabric on earth. And it's all mine, my own personal playground. I enter a second finger into her, and I'm rewarded with her moans. Hooking my fingers, I find the bumpy ridges of her G-spot and play it like a washboard and scoop out the cream building up inside. I drink it like warm milk as it spills onto my fingers, and I dip my tongue deep into her hole to make sure I don't miss a drop. It's sweet as fruit and addicting as hell. I'm a junkie for it. She starts to buck and curse and scream my name, begging for more. If she wants more, I'll give her more. I'll give this woman whatever she wants. I'm hers, body and soul. I stand up, keeping her backside dangling off the bed, and push her knees up to her armpits, spreading her pussy and ass until both are in perfect view. With one swift thrust, I enter her and feel her muscles clamp down on me. As I fuck her, she screams, "Harder!" Her wish is my command. I fuck her harder, and her gorgeous plump breasts jiggle and bounce. I watch my cock slide in and out of her, coated in her white cream. There's a sexy squelching sound each time we come back together again. I can feel my orgasm rising. I don't want to go before her, but I won't be able to help it. "I'm gonna come, baby," I warn her, Just as the words are leaving my mouth, her pussy clamps down like a vice and she's howling, eyes rolling back in her head like a woman possessed. Seeing her in the throes of an orgasm is more than I can take, and I unleash shot after shot of my seed inside of her. I have to wait several seconds for her muscles to relax before they're willing to release me. I let out a tight groan and clench my teeth as my sensitive cockhead slides out of her tight pussy. Some of my cum dribbles out with me, but mostly it stays inside. I want to see the cream pie, I tell her. She smiles up at me with those sexy full lips. I want to see it too. I go to the closet and pull the full-length mirror off the back of the door and place it in front of her. She sits up, but can barely see over her belly. When I'm finally able to get the mirror at an angle to where we can both enjoy the show, I spread her pussy wide. Push it out for me, I tell her. She bears down, which makes both her pussy lips and asshole puff out. It bubbles out at first, then spills over, settling into the nook of her asshole. It might just be the sexiest thing I've ever seen. She dips her fingers in to dig out the rest, then rubs it across her clit. Tired from sitting up, she lays back against her pillow with a contented sigh. "That was incredible," she says. I kiss the tip of her nose, then her lips, and say, "I love you." "I love you more," she replies. But I know that's impossible. I run us a bath in the jacuzzi tub. We settle in and I wash her as she looks out the window with a smile barely touching her lips. I still can't believe this is my life. I have the woman of my dreams and our growing child. I couldn't have asked for anything more.
This has been an Audible Studios production of Her Dad's Friend, written by Penny Wilder. Performed by Lillian Clare and Blake Richard. Executive producers Susie Bright and Mike Charzuk. Producer Neil Basic. Copyright 2016 by Penny Wilder. Production copyright 2017 by Audible Inc. Audible Studios is a division of Audible Inc.
Audible hopes you have enjoyed this program.